All right. All right. Listen, I see the comments. Right. I see you, corporate duck, running late. Tisk, tisk. I have reason. I'm over here having Jake try and help me because, as you can see, my camera quality is not what it usually is. This is what we usually record off of, ladies and gentlemen. This is what we usually stream off of.
Mm-hmm.
And for whatever reason, over the past few days, this has not been working.
Yep.
Got a new cable for it. It's not the cable. The camera recognizes it's plugged in. The computer doesn't recognize there's a camera. So if any of you are more technologically literate than I, by all means, help me. Because I am lost right now. I don't know what to do. Got this
Yeah.
nice camera. Can't use it. I'm supposed to go on Bleacher Report when I get back, not Thursday,
Mm-hmm.
but Friday. And I don't know how I'm going to do that if I don't have my camera. What can go wrong will go wrong. Anyways, y'all aren't here for all that. Let's talk some football because the season's right around the corner. Jake, how you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Yeah, it's been week one is out of the way for fall ball for a lot of teams, depending on what their schedule is. What's up, Moon? How you doing, man? Boomer, what's up? Patriot Life, what's up, Rob? Travelpreneur, what's going on, my dog? Travelpreneur, what is up, man? Love your sports podcast. Corporate Duck, Five Adam, and Chicken, first one in here today. But I'm doing good, man. Summertime, getting back to school's almost back in session down the south for kids. All sorts of fun things. But the cool part is football's here. So I think everyone is really antsy. They want this season. They want the 31st to be here like ASAP. I mean, I feel the same way though.
Yeah, man, I'm just itching for the season to be here.
Mm-hmm.
Steven asks, have I tried uninstalling and reinstalling? There was never anything for me to like install. When I got the camera, I just plugged in the cable and it said streaming mode standby, ready to go. Like I clicked what I needed to do and was ready to rock and roll. Right. So I've always told y'all I grew up on a horse ranch without internet. Y'all think I know what I'm doing here. I grew up without internet. I have no idea. Like I'm technologically illiterate. All I know how to do is talk good.
Hey, and you do an awesome job at that, Ty. Awesome job. You know, awesome job. Yes, for those commenting, it is a white T-shirt today. Everybody, white T-shirt. You guys like it? Yeah. No, somebody's like, dude, you gotta put on some different colors. I was like, you know what, man, I do gotta put on some different colors.
Yeah, I
You
got the
know,
memo that you weren't going to be wearing black, so
I love it,
I
man.
slotted on the black shirt.
I love it. Yes, looks good. Looks good.
But listen, with football around the corner, we figured we'd do a show today. Talk
Mm-hmm.
about some freshmen showing out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Steven, please do. Please do. This is a Mac though. So like I have experience building like Windows PCs because me and my buddy would get bored once I got to college and we'd build computers.
Yeah,
But Mac, I don't understand.
man, I
Still
love
very
the Mac.
much. Oh no, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it.
Yeah,
Right? This is a
yeah,
me problem. This
yeah.
is
Okay.
not a Mac problem. This is a Ty problem, and I'm well aware of this. Right?
Yeah,
I'll always be honest with you, but definitely hit me up in the DMs, Steven, because
definitely.
yeah, I've tried that, man. I've tried different chords. I've tried everything. I've tried. I can't even find articles about it online. Anyways,
It's all
so
good.
we figured we'd talk about some freshmen standing out, right? We have some reports from Kane Womack,
Mm-hmm.
from Kalen DeBoer,
Yep.
from these coaches
Yep.
about some freshmen at Alabama really looking good.
Mm-hmm.
Jake, there's a freshman at OU
Yes.
who people need to know about. Now, Oklahoma fans are going to know about him. Bama fans are going to know about him because unfortunately, Bama really wanted him.
Mm.
Bama really wanted him in this class. He ended up going to Oklahoma. I think that's where we're going to start. But we also need to talk about SEC predictions in the back half of this, so you don't want to miss that. You need to know what you need to be on the lookout for in the SEC. We're here to do that. From now until the season, we will be doing predictions on the show for each and every conference starting today with the SEC. But let's start with the Oklahoma freshman you need to know. And Steven beat me to it. Danny Okoye.
Mm.
Danny Okoye played in a homeschool league. So I
Wow.
think there's this inclination for a lot of people, even people that keep up with recruiting. You may not know a whole lot about him, or as much as you may know about other guys.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a cat that had camped at Alabama.
Okay.
And you heard the Alabama coaching staff afterwards. Shout out, Janet. Happy you're here.
Good
You
to
heard
see
the Alabama staff afterwards being like, hey, this guy is a dude, right? Like Saban wanted him real bad.
you.
I
Mhm.
remember every time he would come and visit, and then the time he camped, I mean, they were talking about like, hey, this is a guy you want to add into your class.
Yeah, I heard about him.
Bama's real deep at that position, right?
Mhm.
But
Yep.
even with being real deep, do you know how amazing it would have been
Mhm.
if you could have added in a Noah Carter and a Danny Okoye?
Oh man, yeah.
Now, they're very similar, right?
Mhm.
They're very, very similar in a lot of the things they do. But Danny Okoye goes to Oklahoma already. You heard Teddy talking about it today. They run a great podcast over there.
Mhm.
And they're talking about this guy might be the most athletic guy on the team for Oklahoma. And we've talked about this before. That there are certain guys on that Oklahoma team that you need to look out for. Five Adams says one player does not make difference. Football is not. Nobody's saying that. We're just pointing out the fact, right? Just like saying Xavier Brown is a dude. That's a fact.
Yeah.
But we then wouldn't, because I see right here you said Xavier Brown is first team quarterback. You see what I mean? Like your argument down here is kind of then making it a double-edged sword. Because that's true. Xavier's a dude. Xavier's going to run with the first team.
Yeah.
But then that same argument would then carry over for him, right? Like we then can't acknowledge how great he is, how much other teams would have loved him because of this. So
Oh yeah.
this is a guy you really want. Now, Steven says the only sad thing is our edge room is deep. It is.
Mm.
But I think this is a guy that's going to push for playing time. Maybe not starting off because, like you said, Steven, you got some guys with some seniority that you really like. But goodness gracious, Danny Okoye, someone that I think in 2 years, a lot of people are going to be wishing was in their recruiting class. Jake, talk to me about Okoye, what you know about him. And yeah, let's dive into it.
Well, here's the thing. I think with Okoye, interesting enough, right? He comes from like a homeschool league. This is a fun topic because for the longest time I was homeschooled. So I was homeschooled up until 7th grade. And the reason was from on my end was my hearing loss, right? Like in learning to pronunciate words. I've talked to you about it, Ty. But it's unique coming from that background because when you do come from like homeschool, you don't necessarily have the same, I guess, sort of dynamic and social structure as you get when you go into like a public school or even a private school. You know what I'm saying? Like you have to learn, a little more social cues and whatnot. And it's funny because I started playing football right around that time frame. And coming in, I was just so in tune to what the coaches were saying, very locked into what they were saying. And I don't know if that necessarily has to do with not having as many distractions at home, right? Because you got that shining bright, man. You got that sunshine in the back. You got an angel back there, dude.
Yeah,
Man, God's blessing you today. Woo!
I'm gonna try and transition to the other side of the room, but I have to do a little bit of work. So bear with me.
You're good.
Bear with me.
Getting back to that, you think about school in general, and you think about going to school. You go into public school or private school, whatever it is, when you have a lot more classmates, you can kind of be in a situation maybe where you can easily kind of get tuned into more of the social dynamics and friends right around you in class instead of being kind of so focused into what you're learning. And I think that's where the benefit is at times with the homeschool aspect is because there's not a lot, you're used to the environment, right? So you sit there and you're really kind of locked in, right, to what you're doing and you're learning, right? At that same time is a different style of than the way you're going to learn at a public school, right? And it can be adjusted based on how good that teacher is or your parent is teaching you. I'll tell you, like my mom was a phenomenal teacher, helped me out a lot. And it was really benefited me, I think, in the long run with football. And I could see where with Okoye, it could be beneficial for him. Now, this guy is coming into a program. He came in early in January, so that's really helpful at Oklahoma. I think they also see like this guy's just out there. He just has a really good work ethic, right? That's another big part of it is like how much can you utilize the time you're given to really benefit you in the long run as far as on the field and what you're trying to process with this new all the new things you're learning, right? Because you're learning a lot of new stuff when you're going from high school to college. I mean, it's wild. So I really like to see kind of where this guy ends up depth chart wise, how much playing time he gets. But it's cool to see that he's standing out, and I could understand some of the factors of why he is. Not only from a physical development standpoint, right? The guy is what, 6'3", 250. I mean, but at the same time,
Freshman.
Yeah, freshman. I mean, he's a big dude, strong, athletic, but at the same time, where it really comes into play is I don't think because everybody at Division One, when you walk in, everybody's an athlete, right?
Yeah,
Everybody's
very true.
phenomenal. So that plays some of a role, like some guys developing their body, sooner than others, but it plays a little of a role. I think 90, I would say, well, 90 to 80% of the role actually plays is how fast can you learn the concepts, right? And then how fast can you apply that to the skills you're learning. So that's a big deal. You know what I'm saying? So good for him. I feel like that's going to be fun little player to watch as the season rolls on and as they get closer to game one,
No, I didn't realize this, but Steven is saying older freshman. I don't know like exactly his age, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not, I can't say I'm like tuned into how old he was coming in, but what I can say is I talked about him whenever he was going through the process
Yeah.
as a guy that I wanted Alabama to get. I would have loved for them to pair he with a Noah Carter, just continuing that depth.
Yeah.
But ends up in another SEC team, ends up with the Oklahoma Sooners. And Zach, I don't disagree with you here when you're saying Oklahoma's a talented team, but it will rely on how well Jackson Arnold plays. I think that's a fair assessment, right? You have a new quarterback, you have a new offensive coordinator,
Yep.
A pretty new offensive line. He's 19 right now. Okay, yeah, that is a little bit older, but still 6'3", 250 coming into first year of college. That's impressive.
Yeah.
But Zach, I don't disagree with you. Now, I do think that the defense is going to be good because they returned the most talent in the SEC, and they have several position groups that I mean, we can talk about it. I really like a lot of the talent there. Their inside linebacker room. Listen, I think that they've got a lot to be excited about in that inside linebacker room. Much like at Alabama, Jake. I'm certainly not comparing the rooms, right? But I think we talked about this the other day. I talked about this with Coach Sean. I went through the inside linebacker room and I was like, man, not worried about that position group in the slightest, right? Like I just kept naming this player and this player and this player. I think Oklahoma fans feel very similar, right? Without comparing the rooms, I'm comparing the feeling of a fan, right? To the value you have in that room. Where I think Oklahoma fans are like, oh, we have this guy and this guy and this guy and this guy, and you get to guy number 5, guy number 6. And yeah, I mean, it's looking real good. 5 Adams says the guy I want Bama to get was defensive tackle David Stone, who went to Oklahoma. He's a dude. Great get for them. I really wanted Okoye, though. I really think that Okoye is going to be a name you need to know. I think that Nick Saban really wanted him. This Alabama staff really wanted him, and he's going to be a big part of this Oklahoma defense, right? And but I do agree with you, Zach, about the offense, right? There's a lot of new, there's a lot of talent, but Jackson Arnold is going to be super fun to watch this year.
Yeah.
Right? Super fun to watch. I agree with this too, Steven. Jaden Jackson is a monster. Thought he was a little bit underrated coming out. Just going to be a really fun player to keep your eye out on, right? A really fun player.
Well, and it's interesting too, Ty, because you look at Oklahoma from a defensive standpoint, like you said, they return a lot of dudes. And so for a lot of the freshmen, the fact that they're standing out, there has to be a lot to be said as far as their development, how quickly they are picking up on this and being able to play to their upper level of potential to stand out in a room or a defense that has the depth that they have. So there's a big shout out there to what they're doing as far as recruiting wise, and what they're doing, I think, in general with how they're implementing their concepts and teaching, right, from a coaching standpoint. So it's huge, man. It's huge.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I mean, listen, I think it's going to be a really fun year for Oklahoma fans for several reasons. Your first year in the SEC, it's year 3 with Brent Venables. That's usually where you see the acceleration of his defense. You got a new offense, right? New offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
I mean, it's that right there to me just spells excitement, right? And it's part of the same reason I'm excited for Alabama. New offensive coordinator, new head coach, new defensive coordinator. You got a lot of new pieces to this team, and that's very exciting. That's very exciting. So Oklahoma is a team, we talk about them a lot, but for good reason, right? We were just talking about this. Coach Sean, Coach Carl, and myself, we were saying how OU is a game on the schedule where I feel like some people are going to overlook them. I would not overlook that game. I think it is going to be a tough game for everybody out there. And I'm really excited for that game for several different reasons. But I think that Oklahoma is going to come into the SEC, and it's going to be a lot of fun to see what they do. But they're not the only team, Jake, making their entrance into the SEC. Another team coming in here is Texas. And listen, I'm not as tapped in, and I haven't seen as much when I'm on vacation. So it's hard for me to keep stretched out like that in terms of my eye on everything. But I'll tell you a guy that I think for Texas on that defense is going to make all the difference in the world. It's Trey Moore.
Okay, yeah, I like that.
Right, that edge they get, that transfer, because what we do know about Texas and PK is Pete Kwiatkowski, the defensive coordinator, his defense relies on those exterior linebackers, right? Your Jack and X linebackers. Yeah. That's what his defense, it's like that's the bread and butter of it. And Texas, for as solid as a defensive front they had last year, they didn't really have that outside guy other than Anthony Hill, who they rushed off the edge as a true freshman. And he's a beast, man. Yeah. Like I said this the other day, Benji, if you're in here, I'm going to say it again. I was playing NCAA 25, Jake, and I got to the end of my season, got to the transfer portal, and Anthony Hill was in the transfer portal. So you bet I picked him up, right? That guy, I watched, and y'all understand this, right? I've always said I'm biased to the players that come from Denton. He came from Denton Lion. I've watched him play for a long time. He's a monster. He's a monster. But now you get to move him back to a more natural position for him. In my opinion, he's more of that Mike linebacker. He can rush off the edge, and he proved that last year. But now it's not, you're not playing him at a position out of necessity. You're playing him out of a position of convenience, for lack of a better word. You get what I mean?
Yep.
That, to me, is going to be big for this Texas defense. But they also get Colin Simmons, 5-star freshman, rushing off the edge. That's a big win as well. Now, you having the experience at Washington, what do you know about this PK defense, and what did they pick up that makes you think, hey, this could be a cause for a little bit of concern, maybe what they didn't pick up? Or what did they pick up that makes you think, okay, this is a guy that we need to watch in this PK scheme?
I don't know if it's necessarily a certain player, right, from a standpoint of what they got. I think it's more so, if anything, Sarkisian kind of talked about this a little bit in his interview during this first week of fall ball, but he's like, one thing about us right now is because one thing too with Texas, right, is they need that defensive line, because typically, and I don't know if we'll see it again, that secondary can be not the greatest, right? That's been the hardest thing for them, is even with the defensive line they had last year, they struggled in the secondary. What's going on, Kimberly, Antoine, Carla? What's up? Jan, I see you in here. What's up? What's going on? I know there's a couple more that jumped in. So, but, so it's interesting to hear that they got more depth, right, all around. He's saying depth at wide receiver, he's saying depth at that defensive line, but on the defensive side, I think that's going to be key, right? You talk about these outside linebackers and what they're going to do. Um, the key to those outside linebackers, though, being successful is making sure that they have the right pieces on that defensive line. Like the reason last year we saw success in their linebacking core, right? And really what helped them a lot versus Alabama, right, was they were able to take up multiple blockers, right? Like through on their defensive line. I mean, Sweat alone took up 2 blockers, right?
Yeah.
And then on top of that, you had the other guy next to him, and I just don't remember his name. The guy Seahawks picked up, Murphy, right?
Yep.
And Murphy was another guy like you couldn't afford to go necessarily one-on-one with because of size and strength. I mean, he was more explosive than Sweat, obviously, but still a very big dude who you had to figure out a way to get one or 2 hands on him from 2 different guys. And when you do that and you stack those guys next to each other, now that puts a lot of stress on your interior offensive linemen, right? And I mean, we saw that was a big deal, like in that Alabama game. Why, like, you know, from Alabama's defensive standpoint, why Texas, Texas defensive standpoint, why Alabama's offense could not get things in rhythm that they wanted to is because that threw them off. And on top of that, you kind of had some issues there with communication at center. What's up, Brensky? What's going on, brother?
No,
what's going on? So I do think that for them, saying for Sarkisian to come out and say, hey, like there's one area that we look really good is going to be that we have depth on defensive line. Now that I want to see it happen on the field, right? I don't really. I haven't heard the names. I haven't seen the players necessarily, especially when you lose guys like they had. I just don't see how you can say like we're better than last year, or if it's just you have more bodies. You know what I'm saying? Because that's a tough one for me to say like, hey, that's one area. Now from Texas,
yeah, it's hard for me to say you're better. If I was Sark, or not even if I was Sark, right? For me, it's not even about being better.
Yeah,
it's about not falling off, right? Like if you were at 100% and you can come into this year and you're like, oh yeah, we don't have Sweat, we don't have Murphy, but we're 90%. Like if last year was we're still really good. It's like, oh, okay, if your secondary improves and you have better edge rushers, we could be cooking with fire here. So, but I agree with you, Jake, and Steven makes that same point, right? They lost some good wide receivers. They lost some interior defensive linemen. So I don't know that I expect them to be better.
Yeah.
But it's like, how good are you going to be? If your secondary is better and you're not quite as good on the interior, but you're still a force.
Yeah.
It's not bad.
No, and that's the thing, right? And then you would really need the improvement from the secondary play, because in their secondary play, as you can see, they play a lot of match quarters, and then they obviously you saw them with a lot of man free. And so man free is like where you have a single safety playing, you know, a zone coverage with all the guys on the outside, whether it's the corners and maybe a linebacker or a safety coming up and playing some man. That you need that. You definitely need that depth up front to make sure those outside linebackers thrive in this defense. And if they're going to play that man free, right, in the SEC, there's a lot of freaking speed in the SEC, man. Man free is a dangerous game to play, and yet you better have some dogs at cornerback, man. You better have some dog. Like your secondary better to be technically very, very sound. And I don't know if they have that, to be honest with you. That's been one of the biggest things about them and is secondary play. So, and Begman, what's up? Good to see you. And Nitro, what's going on? So I don't know. Like Texas is, again, there's a lot of hype and build up around Texas, and they definitely return some good players, but I don't know if I buy it all yet. You know, I have to see them week in and week out. Like we talk about like being mentally tough too. And I feel like Oklahoma has that mental toughness in who they have as a head coach. And I'm not saying like Sark's not, like Sark's done some amazing things, but again, what's their identity on defense? I don't quite know. I don't know if PK's, if that's changing game to game to an extent. You know what I'm saying? Like I didn't even know if they had an identity last year. Hence why you start to see them bobble at the end of the season. So
and listen, we'll put a little bit of a bookmark in this because this conversation is bleeding into SEC predictions. But here's what I will say, Jake. I think if they, and this is just my, to quote Coach Sean, this is just my humble opinion.
Yeah, there you go.
I think if that team, if that defense had more of a structured identity, I think that
they would have been a lot better.
Yeah,
I mean, they probably would have been consistent. 100%. They just were. That's you want to talk about consistency on defense. You have to have an identity because the defense. I've talked about this so many times before, and I could go into so much depth on these. And no, we're not Texas haters, Texas boy. Like I'm going to be honest with you. Like
he played for Sark, Texas boy.
Like I respect Texas 100%. So, I'm just waiting to see like what the true identity is going to be from a standpoint. Like we talk about coaches who come in, they're like, okay, our identity, our theme, right, is all about. So Womack kind of talks about this. There's other coaches that talk about this who get really into deep defense, but they're like, the theme is like pressure, right? Because pressure equals takeaways. And our whole thing is about takeaways. Like, how can we get the ball back into the offense's hands as quick as possible? That's the name of the game. That should be the name of the game on defense. It shouldn't be just about stops. It shouldn't be about anything else except getting the ball back. But a lot of teams roll a different way in how they start to identify their defense, or they don't really know yet what identity they're taking on defensively. So therefore you start to see lulls up and down through the season. So I think that can be one of the things that's been one kind of the struggle on Texas's end is like, okay, what are we going to be about on defense? Right? Like what is going to be our identity, not just game to game? What are we at from identity? Like, what is our complete and utter, mantra for this season? And from a standpoint, how do we continue to build on that through game to game? And I'm interested to see what they do defensively. I'm not really questioning them offensively. So,
oh yeah, Texas boy. That's why you haven't heard us even question the offense. And listen, question is a strong word. Yeah. I've always said this is a podcast where a lot of the times Texas boy in sports media, you'll hear question, and what they mean is they have concerns. We'll let you know if we have concerns. If we have questions, it's a genuine curiosity as to like, what's this going to look like? It doesn't creep into concerns yet. I'll tell you an area where if I was Missouri, I would have concerns as to how to replace Cody Schrader. Mm-hmm. That's a concern. Now, maybe they have the answer. I really like who they got out the transfer portal. Think he's very talented.
Yeah.
But Cody Schrader did it all for them. When I look at Texas, I have questions. I don't have concerns, right? So, but I agree with you. I mean, you look at the wide receiver room, loaded. Even with who they lose, Isaiah Bond, Bolden, really great additions. Ryan Wingo is going to be a force, right? Mm-hmm. He's going to be a guy that I think people are going to be tired of him by the time he's a junior in college. I really like Jonte Cook, especially in the slot. I think he could be a dangerous slot wide receiver. CJ Baxter, excited for him. Blue, excited for him. And your offensive line, it's going to be up for the Joe Moore Award, right? Or at least competing for it, right? It's that good of a unit. So offensively, no worries whatsoever. Yeah, defensively, just curious to see the identity this defense takes on. I think that's where we're at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and a lot of those guys young. We got Colin Simmons, Kobe Black, Malik Muhammad still.
Yeah, Manny Muhammad's a monster.
Basically still considered young. So, yeah, that's really the concern with them. And then you lose Murphy and them boys on that line, which was a big part of their defense last year. So, yes.
Although I did say this the other day, Brinsky, and I apologize. I didn't. My connection is bad, so I actually, I think Makuba is one of the most key additions for any team in the transfer portal, right? Like Dominic Williams for OU, one of them. Saab for Bama, Keon Saab, that's another one. I had the little hiccup as I said his name, but Saab for Bama, that's a big one. Makuba for Texas. I think that's bigger than Bolden. I think that's bigger than Bond because Makuba, that's a monster. Shout out to Stink Ass Cat for the $20. Thank you for coming in here.
Thanks,
Thank
brother.
you for all the support.
Always good.
Appreciate you, man.
He says you're a Makuba. But Brinsky, we're talking about some freshmen standing out, and my guy for Texas wasn't a freshman. I kind of cheated. I said Moore, the guy they get from UTSA as a pass rusher. I mean, he's a beast,
that's a dude. That's a dude I really wanted because I know we went after him too from Alabama. That was a guy. I'm going to be honest with you. I really, really wanted that guy. That guy's productive.
Freaking beast, man. But I think it's a perfect way for you to kick off this segment. What are you hearing? What are you excited about for some of these freshmen for Alabama that are turning some heads?
Like I said, man, it's a guy I've been giving high praise. I said he's best wide receiver to come out the state since Julio Jones. I've seen him with my own eyes. It's Ryan Williams. The man is just dominant, man. I just can't wait to see him get on the field and see what all he can do. I don't expect him to I think he's going to be like on the kick return and punt return more than Jalen Milroe part, because you're going to still have Kobe Prentice and Kendrick Law and them boys. So I don't expect him to be right there too much, but ain't no telling. He's too talented. You got to at least put him on the field, man. It's just too much talent that you have to see. And then Caleb Odom, I really want to see. He's a mismatch in that end zone. I can tell he can go up there and just come down with it, and ain't nothing nobody can do about it, especially when he starts to build out his frame some. By the time he hit junior year, it's nothing nobody going to be able to do with him.
Dude's a monster, man. Oh, Brinsky hit the transfer portal. Hopefully he'll be back on, right? We don't want Brinsky to get too far away. Shout out to Matt Farm. Shout out to everybody in here.
Yeah, Sven, what's going on, Sven?
Did you hit the transfer portal there, buddy?
Yeah, man, I don't know what just happened. It just went out. I was like, oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, good to see you, Caleb. Well, I love it, man. But
see, Caleb, we'll talk about this here in a little bit. I'll star that question, and then once we get done with this segment, before we go into SEC predictions, we'll hit this right here, Caleb. Thank you for the question.
Yes.
Go ahead, Jake.
What's up, Joseph? How you doing, man? So talking about Alabama and their freshmen, right? This is really why a lot of these people jump on the shows, because you guys want to hear us break this down. Let's be honest here. I feel really good about what I'm hearing from the coaches, right? Like yes, they're still learning. There's a lot of install going on right now. There's a ton of install going on, both offensively and defensively. Defensively, it's cool to hear from a standpoint, real quick, jumping over the subject of what Kalen DeBoer was saying for Sunday yesterday, right? That would complete week 1 of fall ball, and who's been most consistent, that defensive line. That's what I wanted to hear. If there's one group that stood out to him, and he says it's the defensive line, man, I got to tell you, man, like that's the area I needed to hear was going to be the one area that we feel really good about, and that's happening. Okay, you hear a lot of good things about Keon Keeley and his progress coming along with kind of a little bit of a position switch, right? A hand in the dirt at that bandit. But it sounds like he is making great progress. So I love to hear that. Now, that the reason I bring up why I want to hear that and how it relates to freshmen, right, is the defensive line, like I just talked about earlier. What it really comes down to, and I talked about this with identity of defense just a second ago, is your defense, you want to run it like it's an offense in a sense, right? An offense has a base offense, and there's a lot of little sub packages and sub things you do off of that offense, right? To get your guys in positions to win either one-on-ones or whatever it is that they want to accomplish. Okay. I'll tell you right now is the defense is the same way. Like Womack in them, their identity is very much, we have the identity of pressure because the goal is takeaways. No matter what, the identity is pressure and the goal is takeaways. So with that being said, you look at these guys and you say, okay, this defensive line has to show up. They have to be the most dominant position on the defensive side of the ball is that lineman between your bandit, right, and between your nose tackle and defensive tackle. So to hear that these guys are playing at this high of a level, I mean, you heard about them scrimmaging the other day, and that the defensive line is getting some pressure in. We also heard that at one point they got gashed a few times running the ball, but they made quick adjustments. Okay. That, and then for the rest of practice, what he said, about 80% of practice from there on, defensive line was in the backfield and they were making a lot of plays. That what that does for our youth in the secondary and what we're hearing back there. So we're hearing Xavier Brown being the dude, right? Like exactly probably what we thought we would hear with him, just from the standpoint of what we've seen on film. The breakdowns that the different people have done. We figured Xavier Brown would be that guy, but to hear that he's picking it up so quickly and becoming just really a very trusted cornerback by the coaching staff and the guys around him, that's huge. You know, that's going to be a big deal for that secondary. The other guy that's making a lot of progress very fast is Jalen Mbakwe. Right. And to hear that Mbakwe wasn't talked about much during spring ball, right? Like we heard a little bit, but we didn't hear a ton. The fact that, Mbakwe is sitting there going, hey, like he's really grabbing these concepts really quick. It just goes to show, the level of athlete and player he is, not just physically, but also from a mental standpoint, right? Being able to learn these concepts and really pick up on, what they want to do and what the goals are of the total defense, and then also get yourself in a position to succeed right when you're on the field. They talked about vision coverage and what vision coverage is actually about, and there is, it's a zone, but at the same time within the zone, you almost start to match the guy. Like it has some matchy concepts to it, as Womack said. He used the word matchy, right? So, it's really impressive. Now on the offensive side, I'll tell you, you obviously see and you hear a lot about Ryan Williams. It feels like most people going into questioning, I felt like it almost, when I was listening to the interview with Coach Shepard, it almost pissed him off. Like he just had said like, hey, he's doing what he's supposed to do, just like everybody else. And then somebody asked him another question. They're like, so what about Ryan Williams? And he's like I just said, he's doing exactly what everyone else is doing. You know what I'm saying? Because I think there is a lot of focus that Ryan Williams is that guy, and he's showing it on the field. Like there's a lot of good stuff. They were talking about one-on-ones and Mbakwe versus Williams and who was winning one-on-ones, right? In practice. But I'll tell you, you look and you see Caleb Odom in practice too, just as you said, Brensky, like Caleb Odom, he's out there, he's come along really far, really quick as well. I mean, the guy is again, very smart, but that was something specifically brought up about him being there early on was super helpful for him. So I think when you look at those four, you feel really, really good. Now, Mincy's still right there, and don't want to take away from him. I don't want to take away from Red Morgan or Drake or Patrick Jr., who's also doing a really good job. And then, as everyone calls him, they just call him J.O. with Justin Okoronkwo, right? That I can't believe that flowed out of my mouth so smooth. But yeah, Justin's one of those guys. And the fact that Kane Womack brings up Justin Okoronkwo and says, man, I feel really good about him. Like, that has to say, that says a lot right there. You know what I'm saying? Like that, you got to be really, really impressed. So I mean, these freshmen, they are putting in the work and they have nobody's getting complacent. And that's kind of the key out of all this, right? Because you can start to get in a rhythm and routine within those first 4 days, especially in that first week, and not getting complacent. So the practice from the freshman standpoint, there's a lot of productivity. That's good.
Sven saying, I still hate that the Gumps stole Cunningham from Mississippi State. You have enough 5 stars in Tuscaloosa. Leave us alone. Sven, that was a necessary addition, my man. Staff loves him, right? Yeah. We've talked about this. It's not going to be a big wide receiver class. 3 is the max they're looking at. Lockett making his decision soon. I've said for a bit, and we'll answer this right now because someone asked about. Caleb asked, "How are we feeling about Khalil Lockett?" I think it's probably Texas, and this isn't a new take from me, Jake. I've said this to you for a month now. I've been very impressed that Alabama has. Listen, it is a testament to how well this Alabama staff is doing, the fact that they have made this battle what it is for Khalil Lockett. Because let's set the stage real fast, right? If we're going to do this, let's do it right. Let's set the stage for this Khalil Lockett commitment. Texas wants Decorian Moore. He ends up at Oregon, right? Whether they're able to flip him or not remains to be seen. Then they lose several guys, and I'm not even saying that Texas was on them, but several top players from the state of Texas are heading out. Now, I've often said this, right? It's not about winning every battle in your state anymore. Recruiting is way too national, but it's about winning the battles you can't afford to lose. Now, luckily for Texas, a lot of those battles you have another piece, right?
Yeah.
But Decorian Moore, he leaves to go to Oregon. Ty Haywood leaves to go to Alabama. Keelan Russell to Alabama. You know what I mean? Like, you're seeing a lot of these guys. Is it Justin Williams? The linebacker safety?
Jonah?
Yeah,
Jonah.
Is it Jonah? I don't know why I always do that. Jonah Williams, monster to Oregon, right?
Yeah.
I give you all of this to say, I don't think Texas is keen on losing a battle they can't afford to lose, right? They wanted Moore. They wanted Lockett. They wanted them both. Moore is now at Oregon. They're going to double, triple, quadruple down, as they should, on Khalil Lockett. The fact that Alabama's coaching staff made this the battle that it is, that's incredible. Am I saying that Alabama's out of it? No. It wouldn't just be the most shocking thing in the world for Alabama to get this. But it was Jonas. Okay. Thank you, Stephen. Like I said, I'm on vacation, and I've seen some.
He helping me out, too.
Yeah.
I thought it was
Jonah, but Jonas, okay.
Like the Jonas Brothers?
Yeah.
That's on me then. That's on me. I was at the beach the other day, and I got the Twitter notification, and I thought it said Jonah. Had a little sand in my eye, right? I'm going to make all the necessary excuses right now, but
yeah, that's all good, Ty. In the end of the day, I mean, he didn't go to any of the schools we thought he would go to, so so it's all right if we get the name wrong, because you went somewhere we didn't expect you to go. He was definitely in the mix with Oregon. Oregon's done a good job. I mean, shoot, they just got Trey McNutt. So
yeah, they're doing an incredible job on the trail. Yeah, so
no surprise.
No.
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting battle. The Bama staff, you got to give them a lot of credit for just getting in it the way they did. But I think Texas is going to see. I think Texas is going to win this, and we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah,
Brinsky, talk to me about these freshmen, and then talk to me about Lockett.
Oh, you want me to talk about the freshmen again?
I want you to talk about everything.
Oh man, well, one of the guys.
Start with Lockett.
Okay.
Because I know you're about to jump in on that.
Oh, yeah, man. With Lockett, right now they keep saying that everything is pointing towards Texas. That's disappointing, but it's still recruiting. It's not December. Pen hasn't hit paper yet. He can easily flip to us, especially with Russell being our quarterback and them guys being great friend. That's a big key right there. So even if he commits to Texas, it's not a lock he's going to Texas, only because I believe Keon is going to be like, come on, man. I need you. I need you. Let's go do this. You know what you can do over here. He's going to be in his ear all the way up until he flips and signs. So I know Texas is going hard to get him, but I believe Alabama is doing the same thing. But of course, they're not trying to take all these receivers, but especially even though we was recruiting Darius Smith, but we was recruiting him as a safety. But I can just see him, man, just coming to Alabama. I wouldn't be surprised if he say, I'm coming to Alabama. So only time would tell. But these freshmen, I already talked about Ryan.
Caleb Odom, Ryan Williams.
Oh yeah, and Caleb Odom. So I'm really want to know how Jalen Bachway, I that whole transition, because I know he played both sides, especially he was playing quarterback last year. I just can't wait to just see how he plays in the secondary. And they said he made a lot of strides. Zayden Brown, I'm not gonna lie to you, I didn't expect him to develop this fast, but the way he's developing, it got me excited just to see. But the only thing that scares me about these guys, I'm excited, but at the same time, scared because they're so young. And our whole secondary is so young. And when the big games come up with these guys, I expect them to play like freshmen then. And I hate that I had that in the back of my mind. Everybody just doesn't come out there. Even if Caleb Downs can come out there and show up, Caleb Downs in the Texas game is way different from Caleb Downs in the Georgia game, in the Auburn game. Those are two different Caleb Downs. But
very true. Shout out for Sark for scheming up against the young guy. Man, you know what I mean? He knew where to attack, and he attacked.
Oh my God, that should have been coaching 1-on-1, drawing up plays. Oh my goodness, that was so beautiful, man. I remember us having that show that Monday talking about it, man. I was so disappointed to even talk about it. But yeah,
I didn't even want to show up to my own show.
Yeah, man. We got some guys, man. It's just that secondary just scares me just because of the young guys back there. But we'll see over time.
No doubt about it. Sven asks, Around the Table Sports, what about your quarterback room? I'll tell you what. If Milroe goes down, Bama is cooked. I don't see who can step up and win or manage some games. I think Ty Simpson's better than you give him credit for, Sven, but this is a genuine question, right? Milroe is the only one with any experience. I think Ty Simpson is a dude. I think here's the thing I would say, Sven. The progression of the quarterback is not just relegated to Jalen Milroe right now. All the quarterbacks on this roster are going to be better than they were last year. I think Ty Simpson has got a lot of ability. I will grant you that we just don't know what it looks like over a multiple game stretch. But I think that he's a guy that if the offensive line is able to keep him upright, he's got the arm talent. And I think being in the program multiple years has been great for him, because when we talk about Ty Simpson, once again, to quote Coach Sean, this is just my humble opinion, always a guy with elite arm talent, but was a guy that had to learn to let the play happen as opposed to trying to force it to happen. Right? As opposed to trying to force it to happen. And the only thing I'll say about the South Florida games, Finn, is there was like a hurricane.
That's where I was just about to go with it.
They had to repaint the field because it had rained so hard. So that wasn't a great display of passing for anybody.
Yeah, that's why I was like, anytime we talk about Ty Simpson, that they didn't have to stop the game twice because it was raining so hard. What did you expect for him to do that day? That wasn't a great sample size for nobody. And he still won us the game. So, man, I don't know what else you expect him to do. We didn't really see him do anything else that season because the keys were handed to Milroe for the rest of the season. Like, it was his team. So I really believe if he goes down, Milroe goes down, we'll be all right with Ty Simpson.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jake.
I was just gonna say I 100% agree. I if you just kind of look and see what's been said about Ty Simpson as far as really learning this offense and picking up on, because it's not just one guy learning the offense, right? Like you got all these guys out there competing between Lonergan, between Austin Mack, between Ty Simpson. Simpson taking majority of second team reps right now, right? It's very established. There's been a lot of praise for Ty Simpson for the way he also is going about his game and learning this offense. And again, they're not just focused on one guy. And that's what I think the key is when you're talking about this offense is it's not just making Jalen Milroe scheming necessarily for Jalen Milroe, right? Like you're also scheming in the sense of like if somebody were to come in, get somebody step in and understanding what we do as a base with this offense, can we still implement these other keys, and would these guys be able to flow with each thing that we do? Do they each understand it with the same level of competency as a starter? And that's the key in this. It's not so much about, is this guy a better athlete? Is this guy a better this? Yes, you got to be able to throw the ball. Yes, you got to be able to make the plays and read the coverage. But at the same time, the offense is set up in a way that allows you and gives you very clear signals and very clear options of what to do, right? That's why you find a lot of success. I mean, shoot, you could even look at the guy who backed up Michael Penix last year. He walked in and he was making plays, and that guy was horrendous with Jimmy Lake, right? When Jimmy Lake was the coach, he was so bad, I forgot his name, Dylan something, but he was so bad. And everyone's like, oh my goodness. But as a backup, he actually did pretty freaking good. And that's because this offense, again, it puts you into a position that it's very clear what you're going to do, what your goals are. And I do think that Ty Simpson has a good grasp of this offense, just like what Milroe's doing. And it helps having a guy who's already played in it with Austin Mack, because that's something they've talked about also in fall ball, is how much Austin Mack's been helpful of explaining certain concepts, right? Because as Austin learned from Michael Penix. So I feel like Ty would be perfectly fine. I don't think there would be an issue at all. And I think you're going to see, don't get me wrong, I think there's going to be some games where you're going to see Ty Simpson play. So, put it that way.
Yeah. No doubt about it. And Steven, to answer your question, I believe so. Because DeBoer's system, you can do a few different things with, right? And Simpson being more of a pocket passer. Now, let's not forget, I'm not in no way, shape, or form am I saying Simpson is the runner that Jalen Milroe is.
Yeah.
But he's not a statue type quarterback. Right? Like he has the ability to get out into space, to throw on the run, to kind of make the defense move, to use his legs as an extension of the passing game, which is all things that can help this offensive system. But I also think that the offensive system helps them. So it's going to be fascinating. No doubt about it. And let's transition. Right. Or here, let me give you my take on the freshman before we
let's hear it, Ty.
I'll be short and sweet. I have said this since Thursday, but when I heard DeBoer say that the position group that he was super excited about, that had been so consistent, was defensive line, I can't express to you how excited I was. Because, Jake, what did we talk about Thursday? If the defensive line is able to be the unit I think they can be, it's going to help out that young secondary.
100%.
Right? And I think this is the best defensive line for Alabama in a few years in terms of top to bottom. I'm not saying that, listen, as of right now, if someone says, okay, well, do you have a Quinnen Williams?
Yeah.
I'm not saying that, right? Q-Dub was – I'm saying that I think that the collection of like 1 through 6 is as good as it's been in quite a while. And I think that that's going to be great. James Smith, right? Renaud, Jeremiah Beeman, Edric Hill, Hunter Osborne, Tim Smith, Jamarian Latham, Keon Keeley, I mean, LT Overton, it's just across the board from your bandit to your interior. You got some guys that I think are going to be great. And the reason why I give you that, once again, it helps that secondary. Now, hearing Xavier Brown be a guy that's just impressing these coaches, that's what you love to hear. We've talked about this so many times that even during the All-American game, they were talking about Xavier Brown saying he's the most college-ready defensive back.
Yeah.
Right? That's what I love to hear. Absolutely love to hear. Steven, I agree. Now, I do think that they have I could give you some names that I think could hit that status with a great year. I think if Tim Keenan takes that next step, oh, he's going to be real good, right? I think Tim Keenan, if he can take what he did last year and continue that development through the offseason, boy, he's going to be good. But I do agree with you. And Otis being healthy, that's another one, right? I agree with you, though, Stephen, in terms of, I think, top to bottom, very good group. But who's going to take that? Who's going to become a superstar? I don't know, but that's exciting, right? Very excited about that. Alan Berry with the $5. Get that comment out of here. I'm just kidding. Alan Berry with the $5 saying, I'm sure you guys have done it before, but can you help me understand the differences on the new defensive scheme? Absolutely. And who better for me to do this with? Jake, our resident former D1 college football player, played defense, played safety. Jake, if you could quickly go through the differences in Saban's defense, this defense, and I think that the easiest, the first one that we'll talk about is the pattern match versus vision and break coverage. But I turn it over to you.
Okay, man. I'll try to make this quick so I'm not the main talker on this too much. But yeah, real quick, pattern match versus like a vision coverage. The difference is really what you're seeing is the rules, right? Pattern match is a rules that's made to stack additional numbers in the box. For those who don't understand what that means, it means the number of guys you have within that 7-yard box, right? There's 7 yards behind the line of scrimmage and there's 7 yards in front of the line of scrimmage. That is called the box. And within that, you want to have equal or more numbers when you play against the run. The pattern match was made to have the same numbers to equal against the run, but also to have certain rules that if you played against a team that could beat you over the top, basically in 4 verts, right? What a lot of people call Seattle, that those rules, you would allow you to get out of just a simple bring guys up on coverage. Okay. And allow you to basically break that and still be able to cover guys downfield, right, with good coverage. Those rules in pattern match were all based on the depth of that the wide receivers would run and what they were coming out of. Most of the time you'd see that in a spread, right, or like a 10 personnel, meaning you have one running back, no tight end, and then the rest of the guys out at wide receiver. So the pattern match, again, was created not to get beat deep, but also to have the number of guys you needed in playing against the run within the box. To real quick, also with pattern match, it goes from a cover 3 into a cover 1 based on those routes. Okay, so that's one of the things that becomes a little more difficult is identifying when to switch that from the defensive back standpoint. There's also a little bit of difficulty from standpoint of split coverage in pattern match. You'll split the field, right? Split coverage. We will see a little bit of that in the vision coverage. You're not getting away from split coverage. A lot of teams still run that, but for the most part, you are seeing cover 3 because Saban's defense was a 3-4. Granted, he moved towards a more of a 3-4 nickel full time towards the end of his reign. I would say the last 5 years or so, it was moving towards that direction just due to the fact that more teams were spreading out the field of play, and you needed to have more speed on the field, right? So, but still, he stuck to his guns with running that pattern match, basically a cover 3. Then, depending on what happens, turns into a cover 1. There's a lot of little aspects to that. Real quick on the vision coverage, what you're doing is you're still playing anywhere. You could play cover 3, cover 4, cover 2. You're mainly going to see cover 3, some cover 4. But the biggest thing you're going to see out of it, you'll see some man free. Don't get me wrong. But the biggest thing you're going to see out of that, right, is you are defending space. So you're defending certain areas of the field or windows where the quarterback is trained to put that ball, right? Within those windows on that vision coverage, your eyes need to be on the quarterback. So in cover one, you're locking into the hips and the feel of the wide receiver's route, right? Hence why we match. But in vision coverage, you're really locking into making sure you're getting the correct depth and what we call a catch technique from a safety standpoint, where basically they'll run at you. You do not give up space. You catch them at the hip and you start to roll with them depending on if they're going into your drop zone. Okay. That drop zone, you play that window real tight. So as soon as you have that wide receiver enter your drop zone based on what type of route tree they're running on each side of the field, at that point, you can run it to a point where you can play a little more match to it, but your eyes still need to be trained on the quarterback because you are breaking based off the quarterback's drop. If he does not have a drop because he's in shotgun, you are breaking based off of his movement. As soon as you start to see the elbow come up, your break needs to be happening, right? Because that means that ball's coming out. And you'll have they train them very, very in depth and detail, right? With understanding the timing, because there's a lot of time references as far as 1, 2, or 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi. There's only a certain number of routes that can be ran within that timing, right? So at that point, right, when you're seeing that quarterback make his movement or his number of steps in his drop, then you are breaking and you're making sure you are in the correct space based on what the route has developed into during that point of dropping into coverage. You just do not want to let guys get behind you. You need to do a very good job on peripheral vision, because as soon as they are outside of your peripheral vision, you have gotten beat and you're going to have to turn around. This defense is not about turning around and covering guys. That's more of a man coverage. So that's pattern match a little bit versus vision, if that helps out. You're still playing a tight window within vision coverage, within space, but you're defending the space where the quarterback wants to get the ball, put it that way. So, right, you're defending man, but you're also defending really that space, because that's where the ball is coming into, and allows you to make plays on a lot of different routes. The next aspect of Saban's defense versus Womack's defense is the gap control at defensive line. Okay. What you saw with Saban's defense is 2 gap, right? Where you will hold up your block, identify the gap, and then play the gap, right? So you saw a lot of drills you see is stick your head in one and then get to the other. Okay. You still get a little bit of dual gap control in this defense, but for the most part, it's going to be single gap assignments, right? Therefore, you have a direct assignment of protecting this gap. Linebackers, typically, depending on how the lineup will be, right? The alignment's a little different than what you saw. Saban will run either an over or an under, and that's just a shift of which side the D line is on. For those, you get more in depth on that. You kind of look that up, but that then dictated where linebackers gap assignments were. Okay. Saban was all about making sure that, the defensive line, that's why they recruited it the way they did, is that way they could have control of the line of scrimmage. That's what wins the game versus the run game, control the line of scrimmage, and then pressure on the quarterback. That was been the goal of the defense the entire time. But over time, it's changed. It changed a little bit with what they were able to do due to, again, personnel that was being recruited and speed on the field. So now you have single gap coverage. With that being said, you also are seeing a stand-up wolf, right? So they can move up into a 4 down lineman, or you can sit back and run more of a 3-4 look. This one's unique because you have some of the names have changed as well. You used to have a money, you had a star, you had a jack, right? Now you have a husky, you have a bandit, okay? You have a wolf, right? And you have a rover, which is your strong safety. So there's been some different aspects of that. A lot of people like Saban's defense because of the way it was able to stop the run. It doesn't necessarily this defense with Womix we've seen the weaknesses, and Coach Sean has talked about it regarding running, to the weak side or the numbers where the numbers are not right. And sometimes mostly that's going to be like boundary. I tell you, this defense though, you can definitely have the right guys to make plays, because this is all about funnel, right? That's why they call it a swarm defense. So they funnel everything in the alleys. You have your force players forcing the run back inside, and then you have your push players or whatnot pushing the run into the alleys, right? So, and there's a lot of different names guys use for that. So you will see a lot of the guys, like, again, why that single gap scheme is important is because, again, if you have the strength, which we do have in a depth, you see a lot of guys come in, they stay fresh. There's a lot of rotation in this defense. And they can play at a really high speed, really, really fast all game long. So hopefully that explains a real basic kind of idea of what you're looking at. So.
Yeah, and then I can answer the other one he has. He has another $5 donation. Thank you, Alan. Saying also, if you had to bet which level of the defense will have a great season, defensive front. Give me the defensive line for a lot of what Jake just said. And this is something that, shout out Jeff Horn, right? He asked about defensive line recruiting in one of my videos, and whenever I was asking him, or whenever I was telling him why I wasn't super concerned, right? I was like, I think that there's, one, a lot of depth there, but two, whenever you look at this new defensive scheme, I think it's going to allow for the defensive line to be a bit more disruptive. And I think that's going to be something that I'm very excited about. Thank you for the two $5 donations, though, Alan. Hopefully we were able to answer some of your questions. If not, feel free to continue asking, right? Yeah. And we're here to answer those questions, no doubt about it. 5 Adam agrees with Line. Truth agrees with Line, right? How to split an atom. Okay, so here's what you do, right?
Man, dude,
here's what you do.
I didn't focus during that class. My bad.
Yeah.
Who you telling?
I love it, man.
But SEC predictions, guys. Let's talk about some of the uranium bullets.
Yes, I like it.
Let's talk about some of the teams you need to know for the SEC, right? And I think that you have a lot of the teams that the national college football space is talking about for the SEC. And usually whenever you hear that, you're hearing, in my opinion, a few different teams, a variation of Georgia, no particular order, Georgia, Texas, Alabama, Ole Miss. That's usually the 4 that the national media is pointing you to. Now, the one that you'll hear right after that is a combination of Missouri and LSU. We have let it be known on this show that I think Oklahoma is a team that a lot of people are overlooking.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I think that they're going to punch some people in the mouth. I think that they're going to shock some people. But let's really dive into those teams right there. Right? We got, what is that? 7 teams. Right, 7 teams to really talk about here. I'll start with the team that I have the most questions on.
Okay.
And that's LSU. I'm not worried about the offense, guys. I'm not worried about LSU's offense. And when I say I'm not worried about the offense, I'm not meaning as, a fan of X team. I'm putting myself in the shoes of an LSU fan. And if I'm looking, I'm like, okay, I think Nussmeier is a pretty darn good quarterback. I think he's going to develop pretty nicely. I really like the outside weapons I'm going to have, right? Because it's LSU, 1, and 2, you have Kyron Lacey, and Aaron Anderson goes over there from Alabama. I think he's going to be a dude that really steps up this year for them. And it's LSU, right? They're one of those teams, Bama, LSU, right when you think, oh, you just lost all your good wide receivers, there's 4 more, right? Yeah. That's what they do. They have a great offensive line. I am curious about the running back position. That's probably my biggest question for LSU's offense, because Daniels was so dangerous as a runner, and that allowed just another layer of that offense to unlock. I am interested in the running back position. And yes, I grant any LSU fan who disagrees with me, I concede you hired an incredible defensive staff.
Yeah. Yes.
Rome wasn't built in a day. And I worry about how much of a turnaround you're going to be able to do in year one with this new staff. Because it's got to be significant for you to really make the moves you need to do to win the SEC. I just don't see it happening. Now, if we're talking 2 or 3 years down the line, gentlemen, that's a great staff they have assembled.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
A great staff. Trojan Fight even questions the LSU offensive line. You think that Daniels made them it might be. I think that they're pretty darn good, Trojan. I think that across the board, they're a pretty darn good offensive line, but we will certainly see how good, right? We will certainly see how good. Defense is where I'm questioning, especially defensive line. I know they got Bo Davis. Mason Smith is in the NFL now, right? You didn't get Dominic Williams. You didn't get Simeon Barrow. Like, you didn't get the names that you needed. And yes, you have talent there, but year one, that's the defense for LSU is where I'm really having some questions. And listen, we said it earlier, all elevated concerns. I am concerned about LSU's defense if I'm looking at this from an LSU fan's perspective. So there's one Tiger. I'll go to the other Tigers, Missouri. You lose some key defensive pieces. You lose some coaches. Now, that being said, you still have arguably one of the best wide receiver quarterback tandems in college football. And that's going to be real tough for anybody to stop. I grant you that. But I'm going to say it again. How do you replace Cody Schrader? And I know that you might be sitting there thinking, okay, we have Luther Burden. We got Theo Weiss. We got another dude from the transfer portal at this running back position that's a dude. We have some guys that we got to add into this offense. Why is Cody Schrader the talking point? Cody Schrader's the talking point because he was a catalyst of this offense. He made things go for this Missouri offense. When they were stuck, he made a play. He was, do it all for the Tigers. Are you going to replace that? Because I really think he was a major part to that offense. Major part to that offense. So that's my big question for Missouri. And I do wonder how you're going to be able, because last year was great. I had to eat crow on drink. He was a guy that I had on the hot seat going into the year. Fantastic year. All credit to you. I was wrong. Not scared to admit when I'm wrong. It's a learning moment for me. It's a teaching moment.
It's all good.
How do you now go into this year losing a guy that I personally, just my humble opinion, shout out Coach Sean, think was a catalyst to that offense? How do you handle some of the coaching losses? That's a big question for me. We move forward. Texas. I'll be very brief on this. We talked about this earlier. Not worried about Texas's offense. CJ Baxter, monster. Blue, monster. If Quinn is healthy and if Quinn's footwork is consistent, he is going to light it up. But knock on wood, in the event he goes down, guys, I know it was a spring game. Arch Manning was throwing dots, right? Like, he had some really great moments in that spring game. I know. But I give you all of that to paint the picture that I'm not worried about Texas's offense. I think that their offense, getting Isaiah Bond, big. He's a deep threat guy, right? And that's why I say it's real big for Quinn to get that footwork consistent. Because if he can do that, then unlocks the deep ball accuracy, and then you can really utilize a guy like Isaiah Bond. And listen, maybe Isaiah Bond will take on like a really deep and integral role in this offense with Steve Sarkisian. I hope so. Right? I hope so. I think that'd be a lot of fun to see. But it's not just him. You got Silas Bolden. You got Ryan Wingo. You got Jonte Cook. You got a few different guys on that wide receiver room. The thing I'm most interested in is the defense identity. Jake, you said this earlier. What is your defensive identity going to be? Your secondary's got to be better. That being said, gentlemen, I love the addition of Makuba. I've said it before. He was one of my most key additions via the transfer portal for any team in college football. I named 3. He was on my 3. I think it's that big of a deal. You also have Javion Cole from San Jose State. That's a big one. That's a big one. That's a huge win for them. I really like Javion Cole's game. He was a guy that I was kind of hoping Bama would be able to go get. Sports Masochist saying Silas Bolden and Wingo.
Yeah.
I don't say this to be harsh. I'm not surprised. And the reason why I say that isn't to say like, oh, I'm shocked that Isaiah. But it's because I think that, one, Silas Bolden was underrated. And two, I think Wingo is a problem. I think he is genuinely, by the time we get to junior year for Ryan Wingo, I think every defensive coordinator out there is going to be like, thank God he's gone after this year. Thank God he goes to the NFL. But I haven't hid that. I think that this was a great wide receiver class. Chris, if you're still in here, Cam Coleman's going to be that same type of guy.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, you got a monster in Cam Coleman. I'm not scared to admit that. I'm definitely not scared to admit that. But your secondary's got to be much improved. Your defensive front it's not even that they have to be as good as last year. They just got to be good, right? Your pass rush has got to be good. The defense has got to be a more cohesive unit top to bottom. That, to me, is the major thing with Texas, is how is the defense going to look? Because offensively, not worried about you if I was a Texas fan. You got the talent over there. What is your defense going to look like? We go to Alabama. I think when we look at Alabama, you would damn sure hope that the offensive line is going to be better. I don't know how it could be. It was 129th in the nation in sacks allowed, and that wasn't all on them. Part of that goes, Milroe being a first-year starter. Naturally, name me a first-year starting quarterback ever that hasn't taken sacks that they shouldn't have.
Oh, yeah. I don't think there is one.
I don't think that there is one. And then Tommy Rees, God bless your soul. I don't mean this to pile on, but it's there was a lot of figuring out on the job last year. From Milroe, from Tommy Rees, from the offensive line. Did you see that is he not? Where's he start? Expand upon that truth. Expand upon that, because you know how I feel about Jahdae Barron. I think the guy's a monster. Really, really like that. I'm gonna need Ty is way too nice. Hey, I just calls it as I sees it, right? Okay, but he is. I would have to go back and watch that season, Steven. I don't remember enough off the top of my head, and I can't think off the top of my head of him taking. So I don't know, but I would assume he did. But I don't know. I don't remember enough to fight you on that, so I'll let you have it. Moving forward, Alabama. I think that offensive line is going to be improved. Them losing weight's going to be big. This pin and pull scheme is going to really help. I think that the wide receiver position is going to surprise a lot of people. I think that they're going to really pleasantly surprise a lot of people. I think that the quarterback growth is going to surprise a lot of people. I've said this before. Alabama has not had quarterback developers of this caliber on campus since Steve Sarkisian and A.J. Milwee in 2020. It's been 4 years. Bill O'Brien didn't want to work with Jalen Milroe. He didn't. So he didn't get the work he needed then. Tommy Rees, once again, I think he did the best he could. He'd never worked with a quarterback like Jalen Milroe. He was still trying to learn Alabama's offense on the fly, right? And I think that we did see Milroe improve. And shout out to Tommy Rees and Jalen Milroe for that. But now you have Nick Sheridan. Now you have Kalen DeBoer. These guys can get it done. And we've seen it a few times. The running back room at Alabama, I think, is insane. Right? Oh, yeah. Jam Miller, Justice Haynes, Richard Young, Daniel Hill, Kevin Riley. I mean, right there. What are you going to do? Tight end, I'm excited about, because I think Dipree is a guy who's a little bit disrespected. I love his ability. I've talked about this before. Defensive line, I think that they're going to be much improved. Linebacker is incredible. Jake, before you and I started recording together, Coach Sean heard me say this. And some of the people in this chat may have heard me say this. Whenever early signing day happened for Alabama, I did a stream with Coach Sean. And people asked, who do you think is the guy in this class that you're like, the one you're most excited about? And I was like, listen, hot take, Justin Okoronkwo. This is before he'd ever played in A-Day. I was like, I think Justin Okoronkwo is a guy that is going to be a force. It turns out he's going to be a force, right?
Oh, yeah.
Already forcing his way up this depth chart. Hasn't even played in America for a year yet, coming from
Dude.
Germany.
Stud.
So, yeah, Bama is a team you got to watch out for. I think a lot of people are writing Bama off. Don't do that. Don't do that. They got a lot of talent. They got a lot of chips on their shoulder. They want to get some stuff done. Georgia. Everybody tells me, Jake Brinsky, that Georgia lost, they lost their tight end. They lost their wide receiver. I grant you both of those. Oscar Delp is a monster. They still have a mismatch at tight end. Now, I'm not saying that he is Brock Bowers. But what I'm saying is if you lose a Brock Bowers and you still have an Oscar Delp, you're feeling real good about your outlook. And they feel real good about their wide receiver room. I think Beck is a solid guy. I've always said this. To me, their offense isn't sexy, but it is meticulous. It is formulaic. It is efficient. And you can hurt people with that. Is their defensive line going to be what they need it to be? I know they're going to be good. Are they going to be Georgia good where they're going to be? I don't know. That's my question for Georgia. I've presented you a question with every team. Bama is the secondary. Bama is where are we? Texas is the defensive identity. Missouri, Cody Schrader. LSU, defense. For Oklahoma, it's how far along is Jackson Arnold and what's your offensive line look like? Once again, I think that the offensive line is going to be good. It's so crazy, guys. I'm not comparing these conversations, but it's an analogous mindset for me being like, hey, I think Georgia's defensive line is going to be good, but how good? Because that's the catalyst. I think Oklahoma's offensive line is going to be good, but how good? Because that's the catalyst. You got a new quarterback who's a first-year starter who I really like. I'm not buying into he threw X amount of interceptions in a bowl game against an Arizona defense that was pretty darn good, which I don't think that's the conversation that we have enough. That was a darn good Arizona team. How good is that offensive line going to be? And when do they get hey, great point, Truth, because that's what we know about offensive lines, right? Is they take a little bit of time to gel. Now, every time I talk about the OU offensive line, I have to give this. You got Bill Bedenbaugh. Much like if I'm talking about the Texas offensive line, raising a question, you got Kyle Flood. Yes. You got Kyle. You have one of the best in the business, right? He usually finds a way to make it work. But that, to me, is the difference between a good season for OU and an exceptional season for OU is where that offensive line is. Where that offensive line is. And I think that covers – Ole Miss. Are you going to get over the hump? And is it going to work taking that many transfers from the transfer portal and be able to make it work on a one-year basis? That's my question for Ole Miss. So I open it up to both of you. I know I took a while, but
no, dude, you were spot on. It was good. That's good stuff.
I had to go through 7 teams, and I gave you questions I have for each and every team. So I don't know who wants to take it from there, but open panel, guys.
Good, Brinsky, take it off, man.
What, you want me to just pick a team?
Just do whatever you want, man. Okay. This podcast has no rules.
Man.
Just do it. We just talk football.
Right. Yeah, I think talked enough about Alabama secondary. They just being just young. That's always been my concern ever since good old Saint Nick retired, and we lost a lot of guys to the transfer portal. And Trey Amos was one of those guys I wish we could have kept right along with Caleb Downs. So those guys you just wish that you could have kept with a Damani Jackson just because of that experience of just playing that position and let the guys just guys like Jaden Mbakwe and Zayden Brown and Mincy just grow into that position, but they got to be thrown into the fire sooner than later. So that was my concern. Georgia with a defensive line I don't see a Jalen Carter on that D-line or Jordan Davis, at least not at the moment. I don't expect them to be that maybe next year when they start bringing in, they're expecting to bring in some top defensive linemen, but not this year. That is one of my questions. I had a question about I got questions about their wide receiving core, especially them losing Rah being dismissed. Hopefully he gets the help that he needs. And I just want to see, I know they got depth, but who are you throwing to in that to those wide receivers? Who are you really throwing it to? ETN, is he going to fit with those guys? Just is that's my question with Georgia. Texas, like you said, was the identity. Kobe Black back back there in the secondary, I thought was an awesome pickup by them, especially them getting Colin Simmons was a awesome pickup. And I think he's going to play a lot, just like Anthony Hill played a lot last year. Who is it? Ole Miss. Ole Miss, it's just really just getting over the hump. I believe they can go as far as the SEC championship. That's who I had picked on Jason's show. Shout out to Jason. Just because how everything is lined up for them, the schedule, who they played. The only really big game that they play is at home, and that's against Georgia. And I feel like that can be an upset. And one of the pieces that they got that they really needed was somebody in that secondary who I believe is going to be that one is that's Trey Amos. And that was a great one. And then also getting Walter Nolan on that defensive line was awesome for them. So we going to see how that's going to help them. But it's really just getting over the hump for them.
For those things. Yeah, no, 100%. I think that's going to be the interesting part with them too, right? Is with Ole Miss is, can you get past the big ones, right? Can you win the big ones? And they got all the talent in the world this year, but that will be one of the more interesting ones. But I'll give you kind of my breakdown. So with LSU, they should be able to, their offensive line is going to be pretty good. Like let's not take away.
I forgot about LSU.
Yeah, with LSU, they will have a good offensive line. How they decide to change their scheme a little bit here, right? Because you don't have a Jaden Daniels. You are really saying, all right, Nussmeier, like you need to go out there and show us what you're about. That's a lot of pressure, man. Like you are now taking over a position for the quarterback who won the Heisman, basically was the entire offense for your team last year that allowed you to even win the games you did win and keep you in games that you were in. So that's a lot of, without that core group of wide receivers. Now I'll say this, LSU does a great job. They do have a great set of wide receivers there that should do a very good job. Garrett's not brand new guy. He has some experience. He has some history. He should be able to step in and run this offense pretty efficiently. Now, what they have at running game, I'm not 100% sure. That's probably the one area at running game where we haven't heard a whole lot about, but that should set them up. If they have that running game, it should set them up pretty good offensively. Defensively, now I'm going to tell you right now, like year one, Baker is a great defensive coordinator. We saw what he did at Missouri, but he did that in time. He didn't do that in year one. Okay. So I'll tell you right now, their struggle area, there's two spots, oddly enough. For LSU, it's their secondary and their defensive line. Man, their defensive line, they're going to be starting a true freshman. All right. Great. Go experienced by fire, man. But if there's one area I want confidence in on any defense I'm playing in, it's my defensive line. It's funny because if we go through and we really break this down, what you will find is the teams that probably have the most question marks, like as far as can they survive, will they be okay, are the teams who have the least depth defensive line. That's LSU is one of those teams. They do not, that's one of their biggest concerns, right? And if you don't have depth at defensive line and you don't have the playmakers you need, at least one focus guy, right? Then your secondary is going to struggle. When you already have a question mark at your secondary and you're not sure
And I
how
was
you're
just
going
about
to
to say
be,
that. Mm-hmm.
and now you put 2 and 2 together, that's not a good combo to have.
Yep.
So LSU might be back in that same position they were last year, of having to score a crazy amount of points to win games. If that's the case, we don't see them necessarily being they're going to compete because they're LSU, right? LSU is going to compete, like playing at LSU. It's a tough place to play. Everyone talks about that. But at the same time, when they play who they're going to play, it's that's comes down to, what type of depth do you have, and do you have the playmakers at D line? The depth isn't there. So I do think from a standpoint, like off defensively, your secondary already is a question mark, probably going to struggle some more. Right.
My fault.
No, you're good.
I didn't want to get this part out. Like Jaden
Yeah.
Daniels won a lot of those games for them guys that they were supposed to lose. He had to be Superman.
He did, man.
For them, because if he didn't do that, the defense was so bad, they probably would have lost probably like 4 or 5 more games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, that's, to be honest with you, that's one of those things with LSU. LSU is good. Yes, when they have a fire offense, they're in a decent defense, they're good. But right now, they are implementing a brand new scheme and mindset without the depth, right? So that's the issue for LSU. We move over to the Missouri, right? Missouri will have.
I love this comment, but I'm so sorry, Jake. But look at Duck's comment. I love this.
Yeah, no, I mean that's spot on. Like I look at how they're recruiting right now, right? They're recruiting pretty well. I don't know if their future is truly under Kelly, though.
Thank you.
I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like Kelly could probably make a move back to the Big Ten, be very successful, or to the Big Ten, right? It's hard because Notre Dame is not a Big Ten team, but they are considered very much like a Big Ten team, just the way they play football. But I don't know if their future is necessary under Brian Kelly, right? Because if he has a year where they struggle this year, what are they going to say at LSU? Are they going to say, "Oh, just wait till next year"? Well, look, man, you got the quarterback of the future, I guess, right? With who they have as a recruit, but can you wait that long? I don't think so at LSU. I mean, they got the same mindset, right, as most teams, you would say, or successful teams in the SEC. So I don't know. I just don't see it being. I definitely see this not being the year for them. You know what I'm saying? But you move over to Missouri, right? It had a great season for what Missouri's been previously. They came out. They looked good. There's things that a lot of people liked about them. There's things that people like this year about them. Here's the thing with Missouri. They, again, lost a lot in the defensive side. Not only that, they lost their defensive coach. They lost their D coordinator, who was a big part of why they even had success on the defensive side. Again, we question the running back spot. Yes, they have a great transfer in, I believe, the running back from Georgia Tech. But again, you're coming from Georgia Tech into an SEC. You need to be – Cody Schrader was probably one of the most impressive backs in general for his amount of beating that he took and be able to run as much as he did, because that dude ran with some serious attitude, right? I'll say that. He ran hard. You needed that. And I don't know if, you can necessarily say, well, we got all this depth at running back to make up for the beating Cody Schrader was able to take over and over and over and over again, because he took a good chunk of that. That's to be a key for them this next season offensively, is how they get that ball, right? Yeah, you have Luther, what was his name again? Luther
Burden.
Yeah, Luther Burden.
Oh my God, might be the best wide receiver in the nation.
100.
He might be.
There's no question about that.
Here's my challenge: is if your running game, right, is not up to par, right? You don't have the running back, that guy. You have to bring in a guy into the box to focus on, right? Schrader was enough, right, that teams did have to actually focus and say, okay, this guy is going to run the ball hard. He's going to break some. So we need to make sure we play truly in the box. If you don't have to do that, then you can kind of play a little bit more soft coverage and maybe let a guy sit outside the box and just play the numbers game on equal numbers, right? You don't have to add a +1 in the box. Therefore, you can take away Luther Burden pretty easy, right? Because then at that point, do you have the offensive line to hold in place, right? Because you can't just be doing these quick game all game long, expect to win against some of these major teams who are going to put up some serious points. That's your question, right, with Missouri, because Missouri on the defensive side lost stuff. They lost things that they needed, right? And especially, again, what did I just say? I said the secondary, right? I said the secondary is one of those areas when it comes down to it, you have to be able to defend the pass. Now, to do that, you have to have a good defensive line. Again, question marks for Missouri. Okay, so it falls right back into a similar thing that LSU has, right? And now on the backside, LSU has they have probably the talent offensively, but what does Mizzou have as far as being able to have that depth offensively? Besides, some of the key star players that they do. All right. The next one, Ty, who'd you go with next? Did you go with Texas next?
Oh, Texas next. And I didn't hit Tennessee, but we can round table Tennessee afterwards.
Yeah, Tennessee would be a good one to round table, actually.
Yeah, interesting one.
But we look at Texas. I already talked about it already. Texas did a good job in the offseason of loading up on depth. Okay, we all know that. They did a great job as far as filling what they needed to. They knew they needed to really refill because they lost a ton of starters. All right, on the offensive side. Now I'll tell you, the running back depth at Texas is legit. That's something they need. Flood, the offensive line coach, is a great coach, and he has a great offensive line to work with. And Ewers, if he can be consistent, right, not get hurt, right, they can really put up some points, and they can be dangerous. Here's where Texas, again, you asked me to comment on this earlier. I didn't think about this, but Texas runs like more of they run almost a unique traditional 4-2-5. Granted, it's more like a 2-4-5.
It's almost split in the middle, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like where the secondary does one thing, but the front seven does something, and that's why PK is fascinating to me.
Yeah, and it is because he has this unique way, but to run like what he wants to run again, because they they have a money, they have a jack, they have a star. They have all the special positions. But again, what they do with their two outside backers who play up on the line or maybe even a little off, right, that's why your tackles, why I've said you have to have some serious depth of tackles. Now, based on Sarkisian's interviews, right, and what they've talked about, that they do have the depth, but do they have the playmakers within that depth, right? It's one thing if you got a bunch of little D tackles who can't put pressure, right, or can't call for the double teams. What you need is the double teams, right? You can't, if they're getting one-on-one matchups, they're going to get smacked, okay? That's the issue, right, where we look at Texas. What does their secondary look like? That's, again, a question mark for them once again. That is brutal. You cannot keep having a secondary with question marks year in and year out, okay? So if they, defensive line wise, don't have those two big dogs, like those two playmakers, those stud ballers that they're D tackles positions, right? D tackle and nose tackle, however they line them up, then it doesn't really help their outside guys, because their outside guys are more speed guys, right? They're outside linebacker hybrid DNs. Okay, it's basically a jack on one side and the bandit on the other. It's very similar to what like Bama's terminology, but does not run the same as Bama because they're stand-up guys. So they stand them up, and that's what they utilize majority versus the spread. Okay, so they stand them up, they use them versus spread so they can confuse the quarterback. Are they rushing or are they dropping? Are they rushing or are they dropping? It's all meant for confusion, but it doesn't matter if you don't got the D tackles in place to put the pressure up front, right? So that will be an interesting one. Big one to see with Texas. I don't know yet. Big question mark, right? Like what are they going to be about this year defensively? Offensively, can they come in sync? Are they going to be in sync, right? Like we can't sit there and say they're going to be the same offense they were the year before. There's still things that have to play into place. Now, we do think they'll be okay. They should be pretty good, but based on what they have, but will they be that? We'll see. It all has to come together, right? Next team from there we had was, who do we have next? Sorry, forgot who we had next. Did you give Georgia next? I think it was Georgia, right?
Well,
I
it
think
wouldn't be a live show if I didn't talk while on
100,
mute.
100, yeah.
Right. And one thing I do want to jump in here, Poetic asks if it's Ewers' health that to me keeps him from being elite. As my roommate PJ, shout out PJ, played cornerback for, close your ears, Bama fans, Pete Golding at UTSA. He always used to say the best ability is availability. But
Yes.
as Frightening points out, and Frightening, Jake, resident Texas fan, love when he hops on here because Frightening, he and I will disagree, but he and I have had books written to each other. And it's all respectful, like I mean, really like great conversations where we might not agree, but at the end of it, we're like, oh, I know exactly where you're coming from, actually. Like, cool. I mean, this guy can talk football. I love Truth. I really do. One of the original guys. He says, as a Texas fan, Ewers' deep ball is a question mark. And that's it, man. He's got the ability for it. Listen, as an Alabama fan, we witnessed it. Whenever he sets his feet and launches that thing, holy cow. I mean, he can hit every blade of grass, but it's about doing it over and over and over again. And if he's able to do that, watch out. Yeah. Absolutely watch out. The guy's going to light college football on fire. All I wanted to say, but yeah, Jake, you already know, man, you can do it whenever order you want, but if you want to take Georgia next, I'm all ears.
Well, yeah, man, that's an interesting one. Well, and back to that, Texas is going to be, their schedule definitely helps a lot, right? Like, so that's going to be a big one, but they do face some early and mid interesting games that will test them.
It's not a gimme, but it's also not just like one you look at like Florida and you're just like, who the hell did you piss off?
Like that's crazy. Yeah, Florida's schedule is wild. But if I look at Georgia, man, the biggest thing when it comes to Georgia, right, is Georgia's going to be good. We know Georgia's going to be good. Their consistency is there. Kirby has it going in the right direction. You know, for all the people want to give Georgia a hard time for all their off the field incidents. The thing is that's going to happen, man. When you have success, especially, every program has that. It doesn't matter. It's just if you're successful like they've been, and you have a lot of eyes on you, then you're just going to be talked about more. It's just the way it is. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it's not like Kirby's a disciplined dude. Like, he is not sitting back and letting these things happen and being like, oh, that's cool. You know what I'm saying? No, he's going to be pissed off. You obviously saw, you know, he dismissed who he had to because that's the right way to go about it, right? Like, he knows that there's a standard that he set, and I like what he's done. Like, Kirby's done a phenomenal job. I have a lot of respect for Georgia. You know, Kirby was able to take them to another level, right? You do look at like Colby Young, who should be pretty good, wide receiver. And then who else is going to step up into some of these spots, right? Like, as far as tight end and some of the different things they've done in the past with Brock Bowers being a very dynamic player. Do they have something else to replace him with, and enough to replace him with, because it's not just one player to replace him. They got to replace like the whole productivity with Laud McConkey and everything else. That it will be interesting to see what is there. I think they do have it, which is just a matter of what we're going to see on the field, right? That's a big part of that. What are we going to see on the field? Who's going to be out there making the plays, and who steps up, right? Running back, obviously, they loaded up some more. They already had good depth, but then you bring in ETN. With that offensive line, I mean, they have a stud offensive line. I mean, you look at their offensive line. I mean, I look at Tate Ratledge, right? You have Ernest Green, offensive tackle, and then you have the other offensive tackle, Xavier Truss. So they have a very
great offensive line.
They have a very experienced offensive line. These guys are upperclassmen. Like, that's one area where, like, okay, like, they should be able to run the ball with some seriousness. That right into what Bubba likes to do from an offensive coordinator standpoint. I mean, he sets everything up with the run. He does not shy away from that. He doesn't hide it. This is what we're going to do. This is what we're about. Be prepared. That's why, you know, they were able to have maybe really two guys of focus catching the ball, because everything was set up with the run game. You had to honor the run and stack the box to even compete against Georgia. Therefore, if you do not have the secondary to compete in a sense of what you're facing speed wise or just setup wise, like a game of chess, then if you don't have that back there, then we're going to exploit you. And Bubba does a good job of that. So offensively, it's going to be interesting to see what they have in the wide receiver room. That's your only question mark. And it's not a question mark of talent. It's a question of who's going to be it. Right. But then we jump to the defensive side. And years and years and years, everyone has said the same thing regarding this defense with Georgia. The defense thrives. Again, it's just so funny, man, because it doesn't matter what freaking scheme you go into. A defense thrives based on their defensive line, right? If you have a good defensive line, your defense is going to thrive. Yes, you need to have the right guy in the middle. I mean, they say this, you need to be strong down the middle, right? So your D tackles, your middle linebacker, your safety, right? Or safeties. You got to have that experience. Your strength is down the middle. It's been like the main like theme of defense for all of time, right? I'll tell you, this will be an interesting year because Georgia does have like Nazir Stackhouse at defensive tackle. He's going to be a baller, right? He will be that dude. He will do really, really well. Now, what else do they have on defensive line? And do they have the depth to continue through doing what they do? They thrive, right, on block destruction. So their biggest thing is blowing. You know, you could say this is like this should be a defensive thing for everybody, but they really focus on blowing up the play before it gets in rhythm, right? So before those blocks are able to even be set, they're already making their way through. They're attacking where the block is supposed to be set, or just prior to where it's supposed to be set. Therefore, it throws off the run game, or even in the pass game, really putting that pressure down the middle, right? Forcing that quarterback to get outside. That's where it's helped Alabama, though, in the past, right? Because then you saw with a quarterback who's mobile, Jalen Milroe, he was able to get outside and use his feet. So there's different ways. You got to be careful how you attack Alabama from the Georgia standpoint. That's been the issue. But they do have this dude right in the middle. Not to mention, it looks like, you look at what they have at safety in Malachi Starks. He's going to do great. Okay. Malachi, he's going to be awesome. The question, though, is at cornerback, right? What at cornerback do we have? And it's great having Malachi back there from a communication standpoint, considering you run a pattern match. Okay, they run the pattern match defense. So, again, they run very much theirs is like a 3-3-5/3-4 nickel. Everyone kind of runs this new kind of hybrid style, whether it's a 4-2-5, whether you're looking at Texas seeing a 2-4-5, whether you're seeing Oklahoma a 3-3-5, right? But everyone runs kind of very, very much similar things as far as these hybrids and money, jack. We just have different names at Alabama. It's a matter of, do you have the guys in the right place to run what you want to run, right? You will see Georgia also will run that pattern match, but they also like to run a lot of man free. That's going to be another one that's going to be interesting from a cornerback standpoint. Do you guys have enough, right? Like, do you guys have the right guys at cornerback to do that? You know what I'm saying? So, and even at linebacker, they should be all right. So Georgia's going to be a tough test for anybody who plays them this year. It's a matter of, from a defensive line, do they have the depth? Do they have the outside pieces on the D line? Not just one piece, but they have the outside pieces. And that will be something we'll all be waiting and watching, because I'm pretty sure they have some early tests in their schedule. So that'll be a fun one for them, for all of us to honestly watch with them. So that was the last team you did, Ty. You did Ole Miss, and then I'll do Alabama. But with Ole Miss, again, they have all the pieces in place with athletic talent. Now, how does everything gel this year, right? Ole Miss got some really key dudes, right? They took 2 dudes from Washington's offensive line and brought them over. They're both going to start. That's going to help their offensive line dramatically. It's going to be interesting how also you look at the running game, right? Who else did they grab? I believe there's another transfer they had. Did Judkins come, or did he leave to Ohio State? I can't remember.
Quinshon's at Ohio State.
That's
now.
right. He left.
Quinshon Judkins.
But they were able to bring in another transfer, and forgive me, I cannot remember his name. But with that being said, with Ole Miss, they'll have the running game. Offensively, they should look good, right? Jackson Dart has that experience from a wide receiver standpoint. They have some big wide receivers. They have fast wide receivers. Lane Kiffin's going to put together an awesome scheme offensively. Again, the question marks, which was the same thing last season, was defensively. right? Can they defensively stop and play in these big games? They have the talent to do so this year. Ole Miss really does. You look at what they brought in: defensive line, linebacker, even in their secondary. They definitely brought in the right dudes. Now is a matter of how do they gel together, right? How do they gel together? And can Golding, with his scheme, make these guys, the from a potential standpoint, reach their max potential? I don't know. It's going to be an interesting one with Ole Miss, right? It always is. I do think that they are going to be they're going to be good. I think they're going to put up a fight against anybody they play. I think there's a lot of expectations on them, which could hurt them in the long run, from a fan base, but also the media base. They don't shy away from sometimes the media getting in their ear. But here's something I didn't think about, and might be a unique thing to think about with Ole Miss this year, and why I'm a little scared of Ole Miss playing anybody, is Lane Kiffin lost his dad, Monty. Okay. Let me tell you what that does, from a mentality standpoint. Lane Kiffin was even different in his interviews at the SEC Media Day. There was something about him that was different. The way he came across was not his smirky, like, kind of, get at you, laugh. I mean, Lane was pretty damn serious. Even what he said to Paul Feinbaum, he wasn't messing around. Like, he didn't laugh afterwards, right? Like, I think Lane is in a unique mindset, especially with Monty passing away. I'm gonna tell you what, and if that mindset of like I'm like serious, like, okay, all fun and games is done, like I'm kind of serious, I'm like serious now. If that mindset flows into the team and the way it goes this year, Ole Miss could have a really dangerous mindset. And I really do feel like Lane, this in the craziest way. I do. I feel like there's a little bit of a like, hey man, you know what? This year it's not like it was in the past. So it's, I don't know, man. It's just there's just something about it, man. And I think that he kind of has a unique way of looking at things right now. And his dad was like his hero. You know what I'm saying? It's a big deal. That's a big deal. So I don't see that as being a distraction. I actually see that as motivation. Some guys can really take on that adversity of that and take it into a whole nother way of motivating you going forward. I think you're going to see that with Lane. I really do. The way he's going about business, I think, is a little different. So I got a lot of respect for Lane, and I think it will be interesting to keep eyes on Ole Miss as they go through the start of the season, just to see what they're really about. And lastly, we talk about Alabama, right? What is Alabama going to be? I'm really high on Alabama. I've watched Kalen DeBoer for a long time. I know what he brings to the table. There's so many people questioning Alabama. Will they be the same team? Will they be this and that? Don't get me wrong. I think there's going to be points, right, where they do face some tough tests through the season. But when you have a mindset of a coach like Kalen DeBoer on the offensive side with Nick Sheridan and Jamarcus Shepard, and you have that consistency, you have that mindset that they're synchronized, right? They're synchronized. Gillespie and Coach Cap, along with Brian Ellis, you bring those in, they are all on the same page. Okay. They know exactly what they're going to do offensively. It's beautiful because if you go look at the defensive side, and the defensive side is like Kane Womack, where everyone's questioning. That is one area where I will say, I bet you that defense is going to be ferocious. The reason I say that is because Kane Womack, if there's anybody who takes on a role knowing the scrutiny and the challenge, right, of what is going to happen when you are taking on basically the position of the greatest coach of all time, and Nick Saban, from a defensive coordinator standpoint. Not to mention your dad is a long time SEC coach, right, who had a lot of success. I'll tell you, man, like that's that mindset on the defensive side. I mean, we heard them. You guys heard them out at practice, right? They were doing pursuit drills, and dude, freaking Womack sounded like Nick Saban. You lost his mind over somebody slacking. I'm telling you, they got everything they need to be very, very successful. The biggest question mark it comes down to is how quickly does this young secondary really pick up and come into their own, right? And work together as one and be confident in their game. That's what it comes down to. I think the defensive line is going to help them a lot. I think the linebackers are going to help them a lot. I think having Malachi and Keon back there, along with Devonta Smith, is going to help them a lot. Those two cornerback positions, really, you're really looking at maybe one or two, but you're going to see a rotation through the year. I feel good about it. I really do, man. I feel good that they'll be okay. But how quickly do they just get on the same page? You know what I'm saying? So I feel good about Alabama. Obviously, I've talked about them a lot, but it's going to be fun to watch. I mean, you got with those teams that you listed, Ty, in general, man, this is going to be pretty exciting from each team standpoint, because on the final team, I guess I didn't even hit it, is Oklahoma. And I'll tell you guys, Oklahoma's defense, man, is going to be phenomenal. Their defense is going to be legit. What you see Zach Alley does, very similar to what Venables did. I mean, he coached under Venables, but Zach Alley's a little more aggressive, right? A little better at hiding things. And now Venables can kind of step away from being a kind of micromanaging the defense. Okay. Because he trusts
That's
Zach
the
Alley.
point for me. Yep.
Yeah. Like he doesn't have to micromanage that anymore. He can trust Zach, right? He'll have a say in it, but you're going to see that this is Zach Alley's defense. He also is going to be able to trust the offense from a standpoint of Seth Luttrell, right? So, but I mean, you look at like what they got, man. Like their secondary is legit, top 10 secondary in the nation. Like they are good. The defensive line, right? They have the depth there. They definitely brought it in from a standpoint of transfer portal. And then I think the only other thing, the biggest question from the offensive side, how quickly does the offensive line mesh? And then how quickly does Jackson Arnold get comfortable in this scheme, right? So, which I think he'll be very successful. They have the wide receivers in the run game to back him up. So, yeah.
Steven saying, "Quit it, please. Sleep on us for Vegas." Yeah, for sure. But I think the last team I want a roundtable on, and we can do this very quick, because I think it's a fascinating conversation. Someone asked, "Well, what about Tennessee?"
Yeah,
and that's fair. Tennessee to me is fascinating because I think Tennessee is one of those teams where I could see being very good.
mm-hmm.
I want to say middle, but I feel like that's a disrespect. Let me give context to this. I feel like for Tennessee, it's either going to be a growing year with a new quarterback, or they're going to jump on you. If Nico is the quarterback that I believe he can be, they're going to be dangerous. But it's year one with Nico, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's why it's just going to be like that big question for me is, how good is Nico? This veer and shoot offense is a tough thing to stop, right? They're going to spread you out real wide. They're going to do everything they can to get the matchups they like, and they're going to try and take advantage of that. And if Nico is the quarterback that like he can be, they're going to be a darn good team.
Oh, yeah.
They're going to be a darn good team. Lance says, poor A&M, already forgotten Rip. Oh, no, I must say, Lance, I'm higher on A&M with their current coaching staff than I was with Jimbo. Because with Jimbo, and Jake, you never heard my rants on this. Brensky did. I was not a believer in Jimbo. I was always like, how are you an offensive guy and your defenses are carrying your team every single year? Like, yeah, and it's one thing, like, let's be honest. If Nick Saban, for instance, defensive guy, and there were some years where the offense was better than the defense, that's fine. That's fine. Are they both top 25 units? If the answer to that is yes, who cares? I don't care about that. if you're telling me, oh, well, Ty, Jimbo's offense was ranked 23rd and the defense was top 10, I'd be like, fair. That's fine. You have a top offense that's able to get things done, and you got a real good defense. Don't go messing things up. Fine. But it was a vast difference, right? Like, you had an offense that was ranked 80th and a defense that was ranked consistently in the top 25. And that's where I was like, you're an offensive coach. Like that, how does that make sense?
Yeah.
The biggest question every year is your offense. And it's not 1 year, it's not two, it's multiple years. I've always said that the biggest question for me with A&M was signing him to that extension. If you go back and look at Sumlin, Jake, this is the crazy part. I think Sumlin had just as many ranked wins, more road ranked wins, less G5 losses for a lot less money. And people were like, oh, so he also did it with less talent. So what my question was always this with A&M, what is the standard of acceptability with A&M? Because if it wasn't Sumlin, then why did you just hand Jimbo all that money to do what Sumlin was doing with more talent?
Oh, yeah.
That being said, this new staff, I like him. I like Elko. What he did at Duke, I mean, you look at every year except the last year, their offense didn't improve, but quarterback went down with injury.
Yeah.
I give you that, right? Like if your offense doesn't progress and then you tell me, oh, our star player on offense, our quarterback went down, fair. That's fair.
Fair.
And no offense to Duke. If there is a Duke fan that sees this, what I'm about to say is probably going to piss you off, and I apologize. You're not Bama, where you have a 5-star in the wings. You know what I mean? Like you're not one of these top 15 recruiting teams that you're like, oh, that really sucks. Our star quarterbacks just went down. We have a guy who's not Riley Leonard, but we're excited about him. We're really looking forward to. You didn't have that. You don't have that depth, and I'm sorry, you just don't. Right? You just don't. But the defense damn sure improved every year, like significantly so. I like Elko. I like what he's going to do. Well, it's not just that they're not Bama poetic. Like, okay, God forbid, knock on wood. If Quinn goes down, they got Arch. Knock on wood. If Jackson Arnold goes down, Hawkins has been over there turning heads. You know what I mean? Like, I can go through all these teams where it's like, hey, our first option is our best option. We got guys we like. We got someone we like in the wings. They didn't have that. Not to that degree. So Elko, Lance, I think in a few years he's going to be a force. But Jake, Brinsky, quickly give me your take on Tennessee, and then we have one more question before we hop out of here.
Gotcha. Go ahead, Brinsky. You can hit it off, man.
I was about to say, just a quick one from them. The only guy that I really, outside of Nico, one of the guys that I really loved from the last cycle was Mike Matthews.
Oh, yeah.
I thought that was an awesome pickup by those guys. I think Mike Matthews is going to be a guy you need to watch in the future. And I think, especially in that offense, he's going to be somebody to watch out for.
Yeah. No, I like that. I think, from a standpoint with Tennessee, it's going to be an interesting year, right? They do return some production regarding they lost a lot, but they returned some regarding like their offensive line. That's going to be a big deal. Obviously, that's going to probably play huge for Nico being early on, and I don't know what their run game looks like. Granted, how much they utilize their run game is not like the most, let's say. Like their offense is more set up by the pass game. But I will say this, you look at what they have a wide receiver, they do have some good wide receivers. I think offensively they should be productive. Now the key will be playing against Tennessee is how often can you put Nico out of rhythm, right? Don't let him get in any rhythm. And then how often can we force him off the X, right? Because we don't want him to sit back there and keep going because that's going to be a thing, is if he gets into a rhythm as a young guy, you can build confidence really quick, but you can also lose confidence really quick if we can get you off the X and we get you moving, right? And there's a few maybe plays here and there where you start to question yourself, as a first year quarterback, that you can run into those mental games, right? Nico's he's really sharp. He's a smart quarterback, good quarterback. But again, first year SEC, how often can we get you off the X? How often can we hit you? How often can we get pressure on you? My biggest thing is hit that guy as much as you can, right? If you're a defensive guy, I want you to bring that pressure, and I don't care if you get the sack or not, man. Like, I'm not saying cheap shot, right? But I'm saying, like, get to him and make the contact at least. You know what I'm saying? Even if it's a shove on the ground, dude, because we're going to show you, man, you got to really learn to get comfortable on the turf, right? Or the grass, wherever you're playing at, because then I'm going to play. That becomes a mind game, right? We saw that a lot last year with Jalen Milroe. They were like, hey, get that pressure, get him off the X, don't let him get in rhythm. And it helped when he's having to pick up the ball off the turf or the grass, right? Like, and then you saw him kind of be a little more quick to move, quick to run, because he didn't trust anything. If you can do the same thing to Nico, then that's going to be an easy one to break him kind of out of that mental game. The next part for them, though, is if they do offensively start to really pick up pace and have fire, that's fine. That's good. Understand. But on the defensive side, they need their big defensive lineman. They got this dude. I cannot remember his name right now, but he is a stud. He'd probably be a top draft pick. But if he's on fire and the defensive line steps up to play, they're going to need them tremendously, because their secondary is not the same as, that is one of their biggest, it's like wide-eyed weakness. Like, it's bad. So not saying like their athletes are bad, not saying like that the players aren't good enough. It's just they have a lot of holes there. Very much, to be honest with you, it's I didn't even know if they return the same amount of like experience as Alabama. In Alabama, everyone's questioning their secondary. Like, that's one area of Tennessee I think is having some major question marks on. So if they do not produce defensive line wise, then they're going to be very vulnerable, and it might be just a total year of growth, So we'll see, man. Like, Tennessee is going to be an interesting one. I like Tennessee. I like, in general, what they do offensively. It's kind of fun to watch, right? Like, it's exciting. And again, can they get these dudes into a rhythm early on and gel from a pass game standpoint with Nico? I tell you, man, I do think their offensive line has some guys in place that's going to help them a lot. But I think the defensive side for them is where it's like, okay, can you guys keep up against some of these teams? Now, here's the next thing too. When they play like a team like Alabama, because of the style of offense that they play, Bama's defense is going to be able to really, really key in on that. They do the same sort of one-on-one movements and matchups to try and get playmakers out there and get the ball. That's going to be really beneficial in the long run. So we'll see what happens. Tennessee's going to be an interesting one. I think Tennessee's probably the one team in the SEC where everyone's like, man, they got firepower, but how's it going to be used and how efficient will it be?
Yeah. I think that's a perfect way to summarize how I feel about them, Jake. It's like, I look at certain aspects of that team. I'm like, man, if it comes together, it'll be a fun year for Tennessee fans. But like,
100.
What's it going to look like? I don't know. That makes it fun though, right? Even for me, that makes Tennessee a really fun team to think about. Last question, then we're going to get out of here, guys. Trojan Fight says, thoughts on the Colorado article from Athlon. This is what I'll say about this, Trojan.
Give me a summary, because I have no idea even what that article is about.
It's not good.
Shit. Okay.
Really,
let me find it real quick, and I'll let you know.
Yeah. Now, they do say several times that this is alleged. Okay. I think it says like 3 or 4 times this is alleged. This isn't proven. And I think allegations are always tricky for me, Trojan. And let me set the stage.
Oh.
I was never an attorney,
Hmm.
but I worked in law firms. I did moot court. I've helped, build legal arguments that were used. I've done, I worked in two different law firms: personal injury, criminal. 2 years law firm experience, 3 years undergraduate moot court, minor in business law. So allegations to me are always something that I'm weary on, and I'm weary to speak on it. And the only reason that I am speaking on it is because it has been such a big thing throughout the course of today. But until something more concrete comes out, I just can't go scorched earth on anything. Right? Because you had players today for Colorado whenever they did their media portion, or maybe it was yesterday. I don't know when it was, but I saw like some players on an interview and they were like, no, that's not true. Right? So until, you don't have a bunch of players out getting in trouble. And if the culture at Colorado was like what that article was insinuating, at least to me, it would seem to permeate outside the football field and stuff you would hear about. And I just haven't heard about it. So it's just tough for me to say like what in those allegations is something we just really need to read into. Brinsky, thoughts, and then Jake, I'm interested in, after you read that article, interested in hearing what you think.
I'm looking at it, man.
This is fair though, Kenny. Where there's smoke, there might be fire. This is fair.
100,
that's fair. And I don't want to dismiss, but you have to understand from my background, whenever we're just on allegations, I'm very, listen, it's been burned into my brain, Kenny. It's like, okay, I need to see a little bit more than just he said, she said, right? But I don't dismiss what you're saying though. I don't dismiss that. It's my background. Brinsky, go ahead. I apologize.
Is it dealing? I do want to make sure that I'm clear. It's dealing with like initiation of the freshman.
That
a lot of stuff, man.
Yeah,
a lot of stuff.
But man, from everything that's dealing with that program for obvious reasons, it always seemed like they want something bad to come out from that program. It just seems like they just always trying to give them negative news until you actually come, like you said, until something actually concrete comes out. It's just journalist BS to me until I actually see something concrete from somebody that actually proving what's going on in there. From what I'm saying, it's really nothing right now. It sounds bad, of course, but it's nothing concrete as of right now.
Yeah, and if concrete things come out, listen, my tone will shift. But as I said, it's just burned into me, man. I can't help it. Like it's, I can't say. I'll give y'all an example as Jake finishes up. Every time anybody in my family starts talking about OJ, if they say, "Oh, OJ did it," I go, "Allegedly." It's just a second nature thing for me, right? Yeah. Jake, go ahead. Let me know what you're thinking, man.
Yeah, this is interesting, right? Just especially with my background too, from law enforcement and whatnot, because there's a lot that talks in here that's some illegal shit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you have it on two fronts, right? You played, you were in the locker room, and law enforcement. So talk to me.
Yeah, so this is interesting, right? Because of everything that's talked about as far as maybe the assaults going on, like actual assaults on the backside. Then from the standpoint of maybe guns being a little bit shown and involved in some crime. Now, Deion's, I tell you, a program can't control what a kid does, though, right? Like if from an individual standpoint, if a kid makes a decision, or a young man, whatever we want to call them, makes a decision outside the program to involve himself in stupid shit, right? That's not on the program necessarily. Now, should the program do a better job of looking at this kid's background and making sure that it's understood? This is what is expected of you. You are held to a higher standard due to the fact that you are part of the 1% of players who play Division I football. Not to mention you are part of playing a Power 4. Okay. Like, yes, there's a standard. Yes, decisions you make will be scrutinized. Yes, you need to understand that if you're coming here, this is what is expected of you. If you do not meet that standard, you are gone, right? I don't know how much of that's being communicated, right? From a standpoint just on this article. Granted, again, this is all this is allegedly, right? It has to be proven beyond doubt. So this is all right now like playing it off like, oh, I think this happened, or we don't know necessarily all the sources and if the sources are real. Right, because it's saying also at the same time, like this is done as anonymous from former players that are reporting these things. You know, there's stuff talking about gambling debts inside there to each other that causes another issue inside the locker room. Okay, so if we are running into if we are running into these issues of, let's just say this is coming out and these are some of the things being talked about, it does mean that there is probably, they're not just saying this isn't a lie, right? So there's issues for sure. It's a matter of the scale, right? The scope of the issue. Is it actually really this, or is it being blown up to this, right? Is it being said being way more than what it actually is? Maybe they're smaller issues, but they're still issues. If we're running into this within the locker room or within any sort of problems, right, inside a locker room within the team of guys, if maybe I'll tell you right now, the bullying thing is a real deal, right? Like that shit happens in locker rooms, and that does not make teams winners. I promise you that. That shit doesn't fly, because when kids come there in order to maximize a kid's potential, what they have to be comfortable, right? If you go out and make mistakes and then some dudes, you're just getting shit on all the time in the locker room by your teammates, you're not going to get any better. So there's a problem there that has to be fixed. That stems from the coaches. That doesn't just stem from players. So as the coaches, you represent the team. The team will take on your personality. It will take on your mindset if presented in the right way, each one of your coaches. So you better make sure that you're doing a good job of the coaches in the locker room communicating this isn't just about football. I think that's the thing about this. And what I think a lot of people miss out on is it's not just about football. A lot of times, like one of the best things I heard, and I hear a lot, and to be honest with you, this is one of the biggest reasons why I respected the coach that I did when I was going through the recruiting process, and Stephen Wilkes, right? Stephen Wilkes is a phenomenal coach, but even better person from a standpoint of what he wanted to develop you as a young man, right? Like he wanted you to reach this standard in football, reach this potential, obviously be the best you could be. But at the end of the day, he had this thing called the dash, right? And for those who haven't heard it, dash is, what are they going to say about you, basically on your headstone? What is it about, you as a human that people are going to remember? They'll remember some of the things from football, but they're also, as you've heard Nick Saban say, they're going to remember how you made them feel, right?
Yeah.
So in the end of the day, like it's about developing young men, because the game ends, but you become a husband, you become a father, you become, you could become your brother, a friend, all these different aspects of life that are way more important than the game of football. But you get to learn how to do that the right way through the game of football and through the mentors and teachers and coaches that you get, and parents as well. But I do feel like there is probably a lot of, I think it's maybe blown up a little more than what it really is, because there's a lot of depth in that article talking about some serious illegal shit that could cause a lot of problems. You got to be careful when you release an article like that from a media standpoint. I would never feel comfortable doing that. You'd have to really confirm some things, but hey, everybody has their own way of doing things, whatever. But here's the thing. If there's even minor stuff, even close to it though, going on, it needs to be corrected ASAP. You will never win with a team separated because half the guys think they're superstars and the other half are just trying to get by and survive. right? And I'm going to be honest, that's been kind of the issue we've seen a little bit with Colorado and some of the things that have happened regarding, his sons and whatnot. They've almost felt more than the team, right? Deion does a good job of holding his sons to a standard, but how they go about it from that standpoint, they need to make sure that this is an equal game, right? And so I want to see Colorado be successful. I want to see Deion be successful. I like Deion a lot, and hopefully this is not in close to like the real deep truth. If it is, then obviously some things need to be massively corrected really quick. I don't think that all falls on Deion. I'm going to tell you guys right now, a head coach can only do so much, though, right? You can only do so much. You're entrusting a lot of that your teams behind the scenes, your player personnel staff, right? Your recruiting staff, all these guys, your assistant coaches, your assistants to assistants. Everybody has a role and a responsibility. So does it need to be clearer, right, of what the expectation is? I feel like it should be pretty clear from what I've seen and what Deion's done a good job of presenting. But at the same time, if that standard within the locker room is not being understood, then some shit needs to go down that's real, right? Like we need to get back to some basics, and you guys need to understand what discipline is. So, we'll see where it goes, man. It's going to be interesting for sure. I just, I don't know, I don't know where this will turn, and what's going to happen. Like I want the best for Deion and Colorado. Like I said, they've been kind of my dark horse for the Big 12 this season. So, but who brings in that culture? That's a great question by Thunder OU Sooner.
Great question.
What do you guys think?
I think that it's a rounded thing, right? Like, don't get me wrong. I think the coach has my opinion, I think the coach has a big deal to do with it. Mm-hmm. But I think the teams that do the best, the players are the ones really taking an expectation and taking it upon themselves to implement that culture, to make sure that expectation is followed on the field, off the field, and in everything you do, right? And I think at a lot of times it's the players, because it's like this right here, gentlemen. There are X amount of players on a football team. The head coach can only know about so much.
Oh yeah. Yes.
So who are you spending more time with? Are you spending more time with your head coach? Or Jake, you and I both go to Abilene Christian University, right? Whatever. All three of us are at Abilene Christian. Are we more likely to be hanging out with each other on a Saturday night or with the coach?
Yeah, well, yeah, 100%.
So I think a lot of that comes from the team. I could be wrong, but that's just always been the way I view it. It's like, I think everybody plays a part. It's like a big triangle where, the coach is going to implement what he wants, even the athletic director. Yeah. By hiring the coaches and approving, then the coach's staff. But ultimately, where a lot of that weight comes down to, like, you might look at the bottom layer of that pyramid and say, oh, well, that's the lowest tier, but it's also the one that bears the most weight.
Yeah.
And the tier that bears the most weight, in my opinion, is the team. That's just my view on it.
Well, it's interesting because whatever cycles from the top down to the bottom cycles back up to the top. Right. So, Presky, what do you think from that culture standpoint?
Everything that he just said is all about the players, man. They determine what the coach is going to be.
Yeah.
Coach can only do so much. And this whole, just off this article, man, as much, I never understood like the whole Deion being selfish and all this stuff. And he's only doing things for himself. And all these so-called allegations. Look through the history of the man. Look at the people that always talk about the man.
Yeah.
Nothing but high praise.
100%.
Nothing but high praise. And all of a sudden, he gets this job. Now, all of a sudden, everything's just going haywire.
Yeah.
Come on now.
Yeah.
I'm going by history. They're going by a moment.
Yep.
And history tells me that's BS.
Yep. Yeah. Then I think that's an interesting one, right? Because I'm glad you bring this up, Poetic Injustice, like 100%. Like it does. You set the tone from the top, right? The head coach comes in. You have your motto, you have your mantra, you have what it is you are about, right? Alabama, Kalen DeBoer has 5 maxims. Okay, those are like the pillars that he stands on. You will not break these. These are set in stone. You will not cross these lines. These are the maxims. You will believe in this to be a part of this program. Okay. Part of establishing a culture, right, is coming in and saying, okay, we had problems last year. All right, here's where we're at. This is how we will fix these problems. But in order to do so, these are what we need to do. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What are you going to go to? 10, maybe. But 5, okay, great number. These are the 5 things. This is where we are at. Okay. As a coach, you set that tone, you set that expectation. That is now set in stone. You expect that who you hire and who you bring in as a assistant coaching staff to speak and teach your message, to speak and teach your philosophy and your mindset to the players, right, will also have those same standards in their life. From there, those coaches have to do a great job. This is where it all plays in the part. This is why the cohesion and being a great people manager is so important, right? In anything you do. Doesn't matter whether it's family, whether it's a job, just a career, like going to work, you'd be freaking work at a Taco Time. You better be the best damn manager at Taco Time, right? You know what I'm saying? Because if you're good and you have an expectation that everything's going to be fresh, right? You know what I'm saying? Then the guys behind you, they meet that expectation. If they don't, then they are no longer part of that team because they do not fit what you are trying to build, right? So then from there, the players that you bring in, this is why those coaches, that staff you bring in, player personnel, your recruiting team, right, have to have this. They have to be on the same page. What's most important to you? Not just, yes, that is important to me. No, you have to feel it. You have to feel it. You have to think it. You have to show me in your actions daily. If you are not part of what I am trying to do, then we will not have success because talking it is one thing. Walking it's another thing, right? Actions before words. Okay. In the end of the day, those actions need to be clear in everything you are going about in building this team. Every single person from the nutritionist to the fucking player personnel equipment guy, right? And excuse me for saying the F word for those who don't like that. But here's the deal. They all have to be in the same mindset. Everybody has to have the same mindset and the same goals, and everybody has to accept these maxims, accept these points that are like you will not cross. And at that point, then you will get the right players who will enact what you're trying to deliver in a message. But if you cannot have those all pieces in place, at some point you will miss a step. And when you miss a step, it leaks. It's like a cancer, right? If you get one negative thing in there and it spreads, same thing in a unit in the military. If you are out on patrol and you have one dude who's a fuck off, guess what? The whole thing can go to shit just like that. And next thing you know, you're in a firefight that you should have never been in. You know what I'm saying? The same thing goes in law enforcement. If you hire a bad dude, and we've seen it in the news over and over again, if you don't do a good job and work your ass off in finding who the right guys are, right? Who has the right mentality, who sees things, who has an open mind, who's willing to talk, who's willing to use their words instead of being scared and making decisions based off of fear, then if you hire that wrong guy, guess what happens? Everybody in the department, when he fucks up, everybody in the department gets scrutinized. Okay. Yes, we're dropping those today. So here's what I'm saying is the same thing goes for football, right? You better, each and every guy, it better be real picky about who you're getting, who you're giving the offers to. Who are you allowing to accept those offers, right? And that's where it comes into play. Very important, right? So I think for Deion's side of things, he wants to win so bad. And if we are seeing some of these issues that are actually true behind the scenes, he is skipping steps as a head coach. There's something he has missed. He has to just go back and he needs to fix that. Okay, that's just something in him. Now we will truly see that in the season will truly tell if there's issues or not, because either you're going to win or you're not. That's what it comes down to. You're going to win because everybody's on the same page, or you're not because you're going to run into adversity. And when you run into adversity, all that stuff comes out. That's what will happen. So it will be interesting to see as time moves on. I mean, it's for sure an in-depth, interesting article.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Goof saying big boy. Listen, I don't think that the YouTube people are going to watch into this at 2 hours and 25 minutes to demonetize this video.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And if they do.
Oh, dang. Sorry, Ty.
If they do. No. If they do, I'm impressed by the dedication, and they got it, right? If they're willing to sit there 2 hours and 25 minutes to get to that, we're good. And like Truth says, no, it's the first 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So after the first 10 minutes, you're good to pretty much will say what you'd like, aside from a few things, but language, the longer you get in, typically the better you are to be able to get away with it. But
sorry.
Oh, no worries, man. No worries.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, sometimes it's needed. Yeah. Sometimes,
making a point here.
Yeah, you lack the words to Ty. I am watching it. And we appreciate you for it, Eric, just as we appreciate everybody. Listen, I say this all the time, and I know some people might get tired of hearing it, but I say it because it's true. The two most valuable things you have in life is time and your health.
100.
And the fact that you're spending your time with us, and for some of you, I mean, goodness gracious, some of you have been in here for 2 hours.
Yeah.
Some of you have been in here the whole time. 2 hours and 30 minutes. I can't tell you how much that means to myself, to Brinsky, to Jake, that you would spend your time with us. It's not lost on me. And I understand as a content creator, I am nothing without the audience, without the community. And I've said this before, but I am so incredibly blessed that all of you have been here, have supported, and that you have formed what I believe is one of the best communities, not in sports YouTube, but on the entire platform. Are we the largest community? No. We're just north of 22,000 strong, but I think it's an incredible community, and that's not on me. That's on all of you, right? Just like I said, I can kind of set the tone with the content, but it's up to all of you to make this what it is. And that means the world for me. Shout out Kareem. Thank you for being here.
Dude.
Thank you for being here. Yeah, frightening. It's 22,000 for a college football YouTube channel.
Legit,
that doesn't do highlights, doesn't do film. It's just my ugly face. And it's independent, right? There's no big money behind it.
Yeah.
It's just a college football channel by college football fans for college football fans. And that's why I really appreciate all of you for watching, all of you for supporting, all of you for spending your time with me. You've allowed me to pursue something that I never thought was possible. And I'm never going to be able to thank all of you in the way that I would like to, but that's why I tell you all the time how much it means to me. But let's go around the table. Let's let everybody know where they can find all your great content. Whoever wants to go first.
Yeah, good, Brinsky.
Well, you guys can find me at the Sharpshooters Podcast. About to crank it back up tomorrow. We've been like 3 weeks off.
Yeah, gotcha.
Crank it back up. Football season right around the corner. Shout out to all the guys, man. Wish more of the guys could have been up here tonight, but shout out to Jake. Shout out to Ty, as always. Appreciate these brothers more than they will ever know. Shout out to all you guys, and make sure you guys subscribe to all channels up here.
Yeah, I love it, man. I appreciate you a ton, Brinsky and Ty, man. You know, I always love coming on with you, man. We've been doing this for a minute now, but man, it's awesome getting on here with everybody. Make sure you check out Brinsky's channel. Obviously, you guys see Ty's all the time. my channel is still newer, still coming around. Like, we got to hit 500, but that will come in time. I just get on there, man, just to talk football and have a place to stream and in general, just enjoy kind of interacting with everybody. In the end of the day, if I can kind of preach a little bit about like just how I did at the end there and get across some life lessons, a little bit about building and being the best you can be, and not being I'm just kidding, not being an F up, then we'll be good. You know what I'm saying? So I love it, man. Catch me at Set the Tone College Football. Set the Tone College Football. Make sure you jump on there with each of our channels, thumbs up, like, and subscribe. Make sure you follow our boys too. You got Jance and you got Coach Sean, JMHO Sports Talk. You got Jason, you got PG, you got Jay and Coop. I mean, you got a whole bunch of people out there that we truly appreciate. Chris Griffin,
Coach Carl.
Coach Carl. Yeah, man. I mean, gosh, if I forget one, forgive me. There's a lot of us, but we have a ton of fun there.
That's why I said the whole squad.
Yeah, 100, man, because it's a lot of names. But you can check us out on different channels. I was on Way Offsides just recently, which was pretty awesome. Way Offsides was fun. Might be going on there some more often. That was super cool, man. I really appreciate those guys over there. They were fun. So yeah, it's a good time, and we'll have some videos coming out soon, but mainly just really start doing some lives. I think we're just going to start hitting lives. Videos are fun. And I know I got to do the videos for you guys, but I love doing the live so I can interact with people. So make sure your notifications are checked. All notifications for the channel, so you guys can jump in, man, and tune in on the live so you can comment and chat with us. So appreciate you guys.
Thank you all for everyone being in here, right? Eric saying he's only been in here for 15 minutes. That's not what matters, man. You came in here on your evening. That matters more than how much. But we'll be back Friday morning with another live. I'll try and have some content out. I really got to figure out what's going on with my camera.
Yeah.
Outside of the live Friday morning, which will be 9 a.m. Central Standard Time, you can catch me on Bleacher Report on Friday as I do the SEC prediction breakdown for Bleacher Report. If you don't have that app installed, go ahead and install it. Follow me over on Bleacher Report. And if anybody at Bleacher Report is watching, thank you so much for the opportunities that you have been able to give me. And Moon, as you saw earlier, he rocked the white shirt, and Brinsky and I felt the force being disturbed. So we came with the black shirts.
That's right, man.
We came with the black shirts because we felt that something wasn't right. Until next time, let me introduce you to the fourth member of the panel. Always quiet until the last second, and then you can't get him to shut up, and always gets the last word, and it's the spinning